Humankind once tried to build themselves a new world, not so far from Earth actually. It nearly worked. But that's very much ancient history now. Much more important is the fact that an old man just emerged from a huge rusting warehouse, a palace by contemporary standards, and has lumbered his way down a winding ramp to meet with a snappily dressed bachelor in the sandy street below. He kicks you out too? Yes, master. Old man's gone mad. He'll banish me over a little hashish. It was quite a lot of hashish, master. In business terms, Wodston, keep up. Yes, master. He's just trying to impress the nobles, playing politics with his only son. Those rebels never should have let him become emperor. Indeed, master. Don't agree with that. Yes, master. Fine. Guess I'll wait in the bar for Dad to change his mind. Uptown or downtown, master? Uptown, you dreg! Also, stop calling me master in the street. Makes me sound like a common slaver. As you wish, Prince Tashino. That's more like it. You know what? This is freedom, Wodston, my man. No roof over my head, keeping me down, you know. The world is mine to explore. Mine to rule if Dad won't come out and stop me. Yes, Wodston, I think this world is about to get nuked. Again. The intimidating smile across the man's face can only be explained with the fact that Prince Tashino's first name was Nuk. You see, he was being very clever, and I mention this specifically because he would have wanted you to know that. Nuk Tashino traipsed up the hill, his richly dyed robes fluttering about in the first whispers of a desert storm. Wodston was obliged to follow. He had been Nuk's doctor for 20 years, and had even served the dynasty that had ruled the empire before Nuk's family enslaved their way through a peasant uprising and wound up in the Big Tin Palace here in the capital. It was out of mercy that Emperor Tengu had exiled him along with Nuk. He was to keep the prince alive out there in the world, or, as was becoming clear, he was to sit in the bar with the prince and pay for his drinks. Yet old Dr. Wodston was actually going to have a busy day. You see, while the imperial capital of Heft was the centre of the civilized world, in theory, it was, in practice, an outpost on the edge of the Great Desert, besieged by roasting sands, criminal gangs, and, worst of all, the skimmers. Oh, the skimmers. These things were everywhere. If you set foot on the sand anywhere in the desert, they'd hear you on their huge antennae and come skimming over to take a look. If you were smaller than them, and I assure you, you were, they'd bite your head off. They didn't eat you or anything, they'd just kill you, for fun. Happened every day, pretty much without exception. So yes, centre of the civilized world this place was, so feel free to imagine what it was like to live in a rough town. At least Heft had Nuk's dad's samurai to keep them at a distance, and to battle the rebels and extremists that plagued the entire United Cities empire. No use explaining why there were so many of them. Once you get familiar with Nuk, you might be able to intuit the reason for yourself. One such rebel was lying half dead at the south gate when Wodston walked by with a bag full of skimmer meat. Bored of being a barfly, he'd been harvesting a nearby kill and tending to the wounded combatants after a recent scuffle. It may sound a little strange for a doctor to have been doing butchery, but everyone who survived the famine that preceded the big rebellion 2 decades past knew about that sort of craft intimately. Anyway, he saw the bloodied body on the floor below the gate and rushed over. "That man needs medical attention," he said to the nearest samurai. "No shit, Shelko." The guard shrugged his heavy armour up and down. For him, that was already too many precious calories wasted on the matter. Wodston took a look at the patient and diagnosed him with having a tumorous roll of coins on his belt, enough to pay for the imperial doctor's services and his master's drinking debts all in one. The guards got angry when he tried to tend to the man, and told him to instead make himself useful by carrying the rebel to the prison around the corner. Wodston, being a sly kind of chap, agreed, then rounded several corners with the rebel over his shoulder until he reached the uptown generator shed. There he slid the door closed to have his devious, yet highly professional and clinical way with the poor man. Like a true professional, he was paid up front. Coins, a clean sword, and a battered crossbow. More than the Emperor was paying him to be a chaperone by a wide margin. Such were the profits of theft. Theft, you ask? Yes, well, Wodston actually didn't provide any service at all in exchange for this bounty, for the patient suddenly woke up before his wounds could be assessed. If you awoke with missing memories, naked in a strange, oily-smelling shed, alone with an old man who was eyeing you up with outstretched hands, you'd probably react in the same way that this poor rebel did. The door was flung open, and the naked ninja's liberation streak began. Turned a few heads, but not many, for it wasn't completely an out-of-the-ordinary sight. This was the center of the civilized world, after all. The rebel made it as far as the guards at the prison crossroads, while rich man Wodston took his booty down to the bar to show Nuk. "Whoa, is that a ninja sword?" the prince exclaimed, snatching the piece from Wodston with childish glee. A few others nearby peered over at the blade. "Did you see that naked man run screaming past the door earlier?" "Which one?" "The most recent one." "Missed that one? Friend of yours, was it?" "He was the ninja I took this from." "So that's why I didn't see him." "Wait, you beat up a ninja?" Wodston proceeded to explain his freelance doctoring racket to an enraptured Nuk. "So you can rob them blind, and if anyone asks, you can say it was payment. No bounty. Wodston, my man, you are the world's foremost criminal mastermind." "But it is payment, my prince. I do actually provide a service." And now we know why the ninja was naked. Look, my good man, I heard that a bunch of outlanders got skimmed down in the West Basin. Bet they need a doctor, as much as I need more stuff to trade for rum, if you know what I mean. With a wink and a shove, the mistakenly mischievous medic was sent to investigate this West Basin, an area known for its roaming bands of skimmers. Indeed, the whole place was covered in wounded vagrants, aka a fertile clientele. Your money or your life, that was Wodston's silent cry as he stabilized the dying in exchange for the crud these refugees were hauling about. Being a kindly old sort, he saved those who couldn't pay as well. It was as if he took his duties seriously and cared for those around him. Perhaps the center of civilization was actually Wodston all along. He took one fellow to the safety of the town lockup. In the United Cities Empire, being a starving vagrant wandering the wastes was a serious crime. Bad press for tourism, you must understand. And so the police were happy to apprehend the miscreant and give him further treatment so that he wouldn't die in their custody. Bad press for tourism, you must understand. The next morning, Wodston the Reaper was at it again, with the market for non-consensual private healthcare still booming in the basin. But as he had feared, the folk writhing about in the sand overnight had attracted the attention of the skimmers. All Wodston needed to do was sit very still. Remember, these beasts weren't looking for food, so dead bodies were of no interest. Think of how a human might kill a mosquito buzzing around them, but wouldn't tuck into a pile of mozzie corpses if they came across one. I'm generalizing, of course. Wodston eventually legged it when it looked like a triumphal parade of skimmers was about to break out in the basin. His rugged old legs brought him into town and up the hill to the porch of the bar where Nuk was staring up at the sky with reddened eyes. "Wodston, they've got the good stuff in there, my man," the prince reported. "And I in here, my prince," Wodston replied, showing off his salary bag. "Wow, look at all this crap," the prince whispered, tears forming in his eyes. "And it was all free." "No, but there was more than I could carry, and the skimmers are gathering up by the South Road. Perhaps you could come with me to oversee the payments." "You want me to help you rob them?" "No, my prince." "Well, of course I will. Can't wait to get out of this damn city. Fug you, Dad, I'm a highwayman now." "You're a doctor's credit manager." "I'm too far down the trail for your big words, my man. Just point me at what to steal." With that, a wheezing Nuk followed Wodston to the South Road, where indeed the wounded and dead from a skimmer attack were freshly arrayed. The locals were already picking over them, and so the prince and his au pair jumped in on it. Some of the dead were wealthy slavers who could thus afford the finest deathbed care Wodston had to offer, and Nuk sold them on it so well they ended up spending the whole afternoon applying the treatment and managing the credit. They dragged their haul back to town, found a barman who didn't care why the imperial prince was fencing stolen clogs of an evening, and all told they made a handsome profit. "What a day!" Nuk said as he slumped down at a table afterwards. "I dare say, my prince, that together we make a wonderful team. We saved a lot of lives today. I think your father would be proud of what we've done with our time. Man, we took like all their shoes. That is an achievement, isn't it?" "Well, I suppose, my prince. But seriously, my man, I think you'd better find like an assistant or something. That was too much." "If that is your instruction, then I shall obey, my prince." "Nice. Yeah, get like a dreg to do my job, and I'll be the overseer watching down over the operation. Should get a nice view from the balcony on the uptown boozer. I'm so tired, and I still gotta walk up there tonight. My man, I hope this was worth it." "Yeah, actually, now when Dad's like, 'You never done a day's work in your life,' I'll be like, 'Seriously? I manage like $2,000 worth of credit at a famous private healthcare guild.' You know?" While Nuk's working day count would still have been 0 if you rounded it to the nearest whole number, it was a marked improvement. Perhaps his father would see dividends from kicking his boy out of the palace. Or even better, someone else could be paid to arrange such dividends on the leisured prince's behalf. To such ends, while the exhausted prince hit the hired hay at 6 p.m, Wodston surveyed the bar for a more reliable assistant. His eyes settled on a remarkable-looking Shek. The Shek were a species from the other side of the world, who at some point in their extremely distant lineage had been human, and were as such not really native to this planet, but their thick, scaly skin and brawny physiques made them very suitable to its rigours. That skin was normally a mild or dark blue, but this particular Shek was pale, almost white. "Albino," he said, pointing to his undersized, fleshy horns when he noticed Wodston staring at him. "Shouldn't be so remarkable to you." The Shek was referring to Wodston's own pale appearance and white hair, the products of life in a shady palace and age, respectively. "I was more interested in those," Wodston said, coming over to sit down. He was pointing at the Shek's arms. Sheks were beefier than humans, and this one sat topless in the bar, muscles and scales fully on display. So you must be that power station pervert the scallywags here were going on about." Wodston explained his need for a labourer, and the Shek decided not to call the guards. In fact, he was quite happy to have someone actually ask him for help. "Not a lot of people would dare be seen on the road with me," he said. "Albino Sheks are cursed, they say. A creation of Narco." "Well, as you said, perhaps I would be mistaken for an albino too, so none would consider it unlucky." "Doesn't mean it isn't unlucky though, does it? Besides, I don't work for people. I'm a traveller. None will have me, and I do no different in return." "I see. However, it would only be for a short time, and in addition, I can vouch for you to the House of Heft if you wish to stay." "House of Heft? Wait, you're that punk Nuk Tashino? I thought you'd be younger. A fellow outcast, then." "That's not quite the situation." After all was cleared up, the Shek was still rather impressed. "I heard about the prince yesterday. I couldn't believe it. The same thing happened to me once, I presume. Would have been too young to remember it clearly. You won't find a Shek in the kingdom who talk of it, but the firstborn prince looked strangely pale. I'm the only one who knows it, believes it, rather. And a bar like this on the other side of the world's the only place I can say it. Guess other Shek come by even up here, though, so let's say nothing else of it, friend. Oh, the name's Isaiah." That evening, this Isaiah agreed to help Wodston. The kingdom he had referred to, by the way, was the simply titled Shek Kingdom, which ruled the southwestern reaches of the continent, far from our current setting in the northeastern deserts. So yes, Isaiah was an especially unusual visitor, and if his story was to be believed, fate had given Nuk a striking role model for what an exiled prince could be, or so Wodston hoped. Indeed, Isaiah was a very good example. He was so dedicated to his new responsibility that he even went out in the night and brought the leftover bodies inside the walls. Then, being not especially in want of sleep on account of Shek metabolism, he began his so-called training. In the morning, Wodston looked down the main street from the corner where he had arranged to meet with Isaiah. Isaiah was bobbing towards him from the other end of town, carrying something over his shoulder. When he neared, it was clear that it was a corpse. Isaiah was nothing if not pragmatic. Those who travel the world learn to use what they've got, and training weights weren't lying around in the road like his new friend was.
"Morning, sir,"
Isaiah called out to Wodston, jogging on the spot once he arrived. Wodston gave an awkward smile and looked back at Nuk trudging up from the bar. "Is this the guy?" Nuk asked.
"I am the guy, your majesty. A pleasure to make your acquaintance,"
Isaiah said, bowing low with a limp pair of legs swinging around in front of him. "He's a funny one, isn't he, Wodston?"
"He's an albino Shek, my prince."
Oh, okay. Sorry, old chap, I thought you were, really poxed or something. You know, probably from your friend there."
"I apologize for the misconception. This fellow's just helping me with something. I think it's a fellow."
Okay, cool. So, Wodston, where did you get this guy? I was thinking, like a normal, dreggy guy, like you.
"Do I not satisfy you, your majesty?" Isaiah asked. "I understand. I am a Shek after all, not worthy of your presence. I will go."
Wait a sec. What's his name?
"Isaiah," Wodston reported.
Oh, cool, like a ninja shout, huh? Isaiah! Anyway, Isaiah, don't go, seriously. I do need you around, actually, so I can be like, "Actually, mate, I'm friends with the Sheks, or I'm not, and stuff. Also, more importantly, I'm starving. Where's all the meat from yesterday?" Wodston opened his bag to reveal it was packed with damp slabs of skimmer breast. Isaiah was so transfixed he nearly dropped his corpse.
"Friends, I have a great idea. The best way to enjoy breakfast. Follow me," he said, and jogged off towards the gate.
"Okay, yeah. Let's follow the topless necrophile out into the desert," Nuk shrugged. "Wodston, I need to talk to you about this thing called judgment of character. Seriously, man." Isaiah took them up a nearby hill and began breaking apart some barren shrubs to make a fire, batting away the various limbs wiggling this way and that as he moved. Once the fire was going, he took out the skimmer breasts and started roasting them up over the flame. It was a clear morning, with a cooling breeze that made the steaks only somewhat crunchy by the sand it carried. "Okay. Seriously, this is okay," Nuk said as he tucked in.
"This was a wonderful idea, Isaiah,"
Wodston added.
"This is the life, gentlemen. Outdoors, the world. The whole world is out there, you know. I've been wandering for 10 years and I've barely scratched the surface."
10 years? Out here? That's literally impossible, Nuk said, spitting meat all over the place.
"For a mere traveller, indeed, very dangerous. For an adventurer, though, there's nothing better."
Isaiah flipped a steak and laughed at the sky. The image had Nuk's mouth agape. "You're so fucking cool!" he exclaimed. Isaiah and his shoulder companion bowed again. "Man, you're an adventurer! Right, we have to go on some kind of trip, don't we?" Nuk seemed to direct the question to Wodston.
"As you wish, my prince. I think, though, that your father never really intended for you to leave the city."
"Yeah? Don't worry, I'll go tell him I'm teaming up with the weird guy to see the sights." "An adventure? Yeah, that's actually like something we could do."
"It's a big old world out there, your majesty," Isaiah said. "Extremely dangerous, extremely wild. Nothing ordinary folk could ever endure or ever imagine. Only heroes survive these lands."
And hashish isn't even illegal some places, right?
That is true, but if you really...
Good sir, I'm 90% on board. Drop the corpse, and you've got yourself a real job. And that was how Nuk Tashino, on his first day of exile, decided to better himself and stick it to the man by becoming a world-renowned adventurer. As Isaiah had said, there was a whole world out there, and as the prince had said, it was just waiting to get nuked again. Too bad that not a single thing about this grand adventure went anything like poor Nuk Tashino had planned. The United Cities Empire. Thousands of years ago it had ruled the entire world. Its cities and machines towered over the lands, and its people enjoyed such bounties that few thought of ever returning to Earth. These days, of course, Earth has been entirely forgotten, but for really the opposite kind of reason. The Empire still has its emperor though, and today that emperor will receive a visit from his exiled son, Nuk Tashino.
Who's there?
Emperor Tengu demanded when Nuk strode into the tiny undecorated throne room of the rusty imperial palace. Don't worry, Dad, I'm not here to stay, Nuk told him.
What?
I said I'm not here to stay.
Who the hell are you?
I'm your son, Nuk. Remember?
My son? Oh, the Green Man.
Yep, that's what they all call me, isn't it? Do you literally not know my name?
I know your name, and I know your game. That's why I hereby declare that you are exiled.
Thanks, Dad. Man, you took all of it, didn't you?
Took? Who said a single thing about took?
Incredible. Absolutely incredible, Dad. You're an inspiration.
Don't come back until you've got more. But between you and me, don't take it yourself. It's illegal, I heard.
Cool. So yeah, I'm actually going to leave you forever now, Dad. Going on an adventure with this scale mail pervert. Probably gonna die and stuff, in case you wanted to. Emperor Tengu's blank expression was unchanging as Nuk let the silence hang. Then, without warning, he slumped forwards off the throne and rolled over to Nuk's feet.
Skeleton wizard,
he coughed, holding out a wet tissue with something concealed within. No, it's me, Nuk, the prince insisted. Tengu looked up at him with desperate eyes.
Find the skeleton wizard. This is the key. Save the Empire, Nuk.
Nuk inspected the offered key. It was a slobbery fruit stone with a fragmenting, papery residue stuck to it from its time in the Emperor's pocket. So, you smoked my whole supply.
Skeleton wizard.
Cool. Off to go die in the desert now, Dad. See ya. And with that, Nuk was about to storm out and leave the city at once, but that way he'd be leaving empty-handed. Or he would have been if the all-important green fruit pip hadn't encrusted itself onto his palm. Instead, he slipped behind a screen to the palace storeroom, and amid the din of the palace guards trying to restore the Emperor's consciousness, he stole as much ceremonial sake and lacquer as he could stow in and about his person. Then, with his head held high and with clattering, sloshing steps, he transported his going-away present to the caravansary at the north end of town, where Wodston and Isaiah were arguing over a matter of professionalism.
You employed me as a corpse carrier,
Isaiah was saying.
Of course I need to practice in a controlled environment. That's the key to success.
I understand and appreciate your enthusiasm, but please think of our image.
Image? Well, of course I'm thinking of our image. Want a corpse carried? Who do you call? The corpse-carrying guy. Everyone knows that. This stingy piece of work is our storefront, in a sense.
Wodston was distracted from replying by Nuk opening the bag on the doctor's back and transferring various objects into it from his pockets, armpits, and beyond.
Prince Tashino, you return,
Isaiah said.
I suppose we shall continue our debate on our desert walk, Mr. Wodston?
Mr. Wodston, Nuk sneered as he finished up.
Is everything in order, my prince? Wodston asked.
Yep, Dad's gone deep dive. Said I should go find a skeleton wizard.
A skeleton wizard?
Isaiah mused.
I've met a skeleton, and I've met a wizard. But a skeleton wizard? That is quite the task indeed.
I should interject here to tell you that when he says skeleton, he isn't referring to human bones. The word meant something rather different to these people, but I'll let you discover exactly what for yourself as we go along. As for him saying he met a wizard, well, your guess is as good as mine on that one. So, Wodston, I've got a credit management question, Nuk said. Say I managed all the credit from the Imperial Palace. If I was to liquidate that credit in the town, people would probably ask for receipts, wouldn't they? And that means to fully realise the value of my portfolio. I don't know, Wodston. Look, I stole a bunch of crud from Dad. Isaiah, take me somewhere to sell it on the sly.
I don't entirely understand, but the markets of Shobatai are the place to buy and sell anything, Isaiah said.
Is it, close?
A few days north, the crossroads of the Great Desert it is. And... what? What are you looking at? It's mine!
Isaiah's horns perked up when he saw Nuk staring at the corpse on his shoulder. Nuk suddenly ran over to the wall of a nearby shop, then returned with a torn-off poster showing a drawing of a face. After a quick inspection, he said, Isaiah, you madman! You've got a fucking famous terrorist here! Wait, wanted alive. Wanted a damn live. Oi, you ungrateful dreg, be alive! Nuk slapped the face of the weight-training woman on Isaiah's shoulder, and she suddenly squirmed to life.
By Okran, it's alive! How embarrassing!
Isaiah said as a struggle commenced. Keep her steady, you oaf, she's made of money! Help him, Wodston! To the local police station, go, go! The jostling quartet of bodies kicked up sand all the way to the desk of the local police chief, at which point the cussing, screaming terrorist was exchanged for a rack of copper coins that weighed almost as much. Now that's what I call travel money. We barely even need to rob the palace with you around, Nuk said cheerily to Isaiah. Regrettably, they were still at the police chief's desk. Oh, don't worry. We in the business call credit management robbery sometimes. Little joke, you know. Did I ever tell you that I'm the Prince of the Empire? The stolen goods were ferried out of the police station with only a modest case file being opened on the purloining prince, and the team spent the evening buying the outdoor adventure gear they'd need for their smuggler's hike. The next morning they assembled at the north gate, sporting rucksacks, sleeping bags and weapons. Following expert roamer Isaiah's advice, they were waiting for enough travellers to gather so they could form a caravan to Shobatai, the next settlement down the ill-defined desert road. Look guys, Nuk called to the others. He was pulling a black shirt from a still warm corpse behind a nearby dune. He cut it up a little with his sword and wrapped it around his head. I'm a ninja! Isaiah! Can you see me?
A resourceful little cringe beetle he is,
Isaiah noted, and Wodston could not help but agree, albeit with a warm smile. Soon a group of armed men set out north, so Nuk and crew fell in behind them. As long as they all stayed together, the skimmers would leave them alone. Simple as that, Isaiah explained. Nuk was pretty sure he got the idea, but he was also pretty sure that a body he saw beside the road a few hours later had a shirt more his size. Nuk woke up the next day in a dark, dusty room. His chest was extremely painful and was wrapped in reddened bandages.
Wodston!
He called out. In reply there was a bark, and a dog started sniffing around him. Oh man, how much of that was a dream? Is this the palace?
Not the palace, Prince Tashino,
came Isaiah's voice. He was standing beside the bedroll that Nuk was lying on, sanding an apparently homemade workbench that took up the majority of the room.
This is the headquarters of Wodston's private healthcare guild.
Cool. So you're saying that actually this is a dream?
Not as far as I am aware.
but you are aware that Wodston is literally a dog now.
What? Oh no, that's the newest member of the family, Kelsey. She's a guard dog. Isn't she nice?
Yeah, I guess. Making money then, are we?
Indeed. In fact, I was thinking of writing a report on the non-consensual private healthcare market to present to the Traders Guild down in the Edge, should we ever head that way.
Wait, we were going to show Batai, I remember.
And what happened on the way?
Oh, shit. Nuk slumped back painfully onto his bedroll as memory was restored to him. The caravan moved on, the skimmers moved in, and the rest was better off forgotten.
That's just what it's like out there in the desert, Isaiah said. Lucky I saw it coming and got you out of there in one piece, roughly speaking.
Yeah. So, I owe you my life then, or something?
I'm afraid so.
Alright. How much do you want?
Sorry?
I'm gonna repay you, man. Can't just leave this hanging.
You've already repaid me,
Isaiah said with a smile.
Kelsey here didn't come cheap, you know.
Always one step ahead, aren't you, pale scales? Indeed he was. The prince took another day to rest while his industrious underlings carried out the business that an unconscious Nuk had invested a lot of money into, so it seemed. Non-consensual investment for a non-consensual enterprise, one could say. Once he was up and about, Nuk saw how the new business was in the very shadow of the Imperial Palace, and at once he demanded that they go on another adventure. That's why he, Wodston, Isaiah and Kelsey were hanging around the northern gate again the next morning, looking for another group to travel with. "You're going to show Batai? Who was just saying that?" a voice said. A grimy woman appeared from beside the guard post, and very deliberately didn't look at Nuk. "Me, right here," Nuk said. The woman's smile faded as she confirmed it really had been the man with a torn-up t-shirt wrapped around his head. "Oh, right. Okay, you're Nuk Tashino, right?" she asked. "Yep, Prince Tashino, Prince of everything and more. How did you know it was me?" "The House of Heft has worn that pattern of silk since the Red Rebellion." "Really? I thought it was just me and Dad." "Well, yes, Never mind, you're going to show Batai?" "Yeah, ninja business, so don't ask." "Ogren's bloody beard. Do you have a carer, manager or something?" "Oh, you must mean Wodston." "Wodston! Convince her to join the caravan, my man. She's too intimidated by me, you know?" This woman, Izumi, claimed to have been part of an archaeological team that had recently disbanded in Heft after finding little of value in their digs. She, though, was convinced that they were on the verge of a breakthrough. The infrastructure that supported the Shobatai Reservoir was located by a prior expedition, but it was never fully examined. Ancient structures, perfectly preserved in the sand. The technology, the information there is beyond measure, I know it. There could be evidence of what caused the fall. The rest of them think I'm mad, and the feeling is mutual. Anyway, I'm going to inspect the ruins at Shobatai and look for a sponsor to excavate them.
I could sponsor you, Miss Izumi,"
Wodston said, less pale than usual. "Would you? Are you interested in history, sir?"
"Oh yes, I've lived through most of it, in fact."
"If only. You'd be the most advanced skeleton I've ever seen." Wodston considered that sentence to have been a flirtatious compliment, and that is why we are better off leaving the truth of history to be discerned by experts. It all worked to Izumi's favour though, as now her expedition was officially sponsored by the Wodston Private Healthcare Guild, technically a division of the Tashino Credit Management Guild as of a few hours prior. Izumi joined the crew as they set off with a large merchant caravan back down the road to Shobatai. Such a large group was ignored by the skimmers eagerly waiting on the ridges overlooking the route. They weren't ones to bite off more than they could chew. Not that they needed to chew what they bit. However, if you remember what I told you about Heft, you might recall that skimmers weren't the only danger lurking on its outskirts. As the caravan column marched into a sandy gully, a group of shadowy folk appeared on its flank. They approached the rear of the column, not in any rush, and the caravanners thought they had opportune customers. Then weapons were drawn, and all hell broke loose. These attackers were from one of the many rebel groups still fighting throughout the desert for an end to the rule of the noble houses, and for the end specifically of Emperor Tengu and his boy, Nuk Tashino, who stood awkwardly as the caravan guards battled the rebels all around him. "What the fuck is all this then?" the prince exclaimed, grasping the ninja sword he knew not how to use.
"No sense taking risks, Prince Tashino," Isaiah called. "We should all... Wait! Kalsi!"
Kalsi had been barking away at the attackers and chased a couple of them around the dunes until finally one had landed a cut across the poor girl's head.
"Right, never mind. We're fighting!"
Isaiah roared, heaving up a chunky sword and lunging into the melee. "Bloody hell, he's gone full Shek on us! History girl, go get the fucking dog!" Nuk ordered. "Oh, right." Izumi rushed out into the chaos of battle to retrieve Kalsi. A rebel attacked Nuk, and he did his best to deflect a string of blows.
"Oppressor!"
the rebel was screaming. "How did they always know who I am?" Nuk said, finding relief when one of the caravan guards struck his assailant down with a heavy staff. "Robe, you idiot!" Izumi huffed as she returned. Kalsi was now in her arms. Seeing the blood-soaked fur on the dog's face, Isaiah gave a great shout and cut one of the rebels in two with a single slash. Another came up and began a duel with both Isaiah and Nuk at once, although really Nuk was just dancing about and making threatening sounds. By now, Wodston had prepared his special weapon, the crossbow he'd taken from that naked ninja on his first day as a freelancer. He aimed carefully, but his vision wasn't as good as it had been. Isaiah stumbled as a bolt stabbed into his ankle. "Please, Wodston!" Nuk shouted. He slashed about with his sword to get the attention off Isaiah. The crossbow twanged again, and a bolt slammed into Nuk's back. "Wodston!" he roared, actually cutting the rebel down in his fury and turning around to snatch the bow from Wodston's hands.
"It wasn't at all deliberate, my prince, I assure you."
Wodston was quick to protest, with one hand held out of view behind his back. Nuk looked around and saw that the battle was over. The attackers had fled, and the caravan guards were already moving on. By the time the guild had managed the credit from the fallen, they were all alone. Wodston saw to their injuries, and Izumi proved handy with a bandage too. Isaiah didn't even notice the pain, staring down at an unconscious Kalsi in his arms. "We'll get them, man, don't worry," Nuk assured him, but Isaiah shook his head.
"They got what they deserved. Our journey must continue. It will be dark soon."
In agreement, the gang set off, roughly in the direction of Shobutai. The featureless dunes made navigation hard, but they picked up the trail of the caravan, and once they got a little closer they saw the ancient ruins Izumi had spoken of, sticking out of the desert all around the little walled town in the distance. The gate guards grunted when Nuk said he was Prince of the Empire and demanded entry, and with that they were all finally safe again. As safe as you can ever be in the United Cities. Shobutai wasn't beset with skimmers, so it had that going for it, too far from their rocky layers on the desert's fringes. You might think then that this place should have been the capital rather than the bloodbath that was Heft. Well, as we all know, Heft was the center of the civilized world, and Shobutai was... uncivilized isn't a strong enough word for it really, as Nuk and company were soon to discover. The crossroad market of Shobutai was named after the vast ancient complex beneath the sand in that area. The so-called Shobutai Reservoir was a facility of unknown size that slept below the desert. It was theorized that the reason the water table was so high in the area, and hence isolated settlements like Shobutai could exist, was because of some unknown quality of the buried ruins. Theorized by who? Izumi, that's who, leader and sole member of the Wodston Non-Consensual Private Healthcare Guild Archaeological Expedition Team. "Who wants to come with me?" she asked the sleepy guild in the morning after their arrival in town.
"I'll do whatever Mr. Wodston desires,"
Isaiah said, sitting with a now recovered Kalsi in his lap.
"I'll do whatever my prince commands,"
Wodston said, looking over at Nuk. At this, Nuk opened his eyes and sat up. "I need to go steal more stuff," he said. He'd sold off all the luxuries his father had unknowingly gifted him, and was conscious that his associations with relatively honest companions might drag him into honest work, a waste of his talent, energy, and good name. Well, you're in luck then, Prince Tashino, as I'm planning to steal a few things from the ancients to inspect them. I bet you'd be of great help. You mean I'll make a great manager? Go on then, get to work, Nuk waved. He eventually got up, shook the sand from the torn-up shirt around his head, and went to inspect this scientific endeavour. Just outside the town gate, Wodston and Isaiah were on their knees in the sand. They were digging sand away from a partially exposed ancient building. While it stuck up a story or two from the surface, there was no knowing how deep it went. It could be hundreds of meters, Izumi excitedly reported. Wodston was less excited, but he kept digging and expressed his regret about volunteering to help in silence. Isaiah was carving through the sand with cupped hands, but most of it was just sliding back down into the hole. He seemed to be enjoying the exercise though, and Kelsey found endless entertainment biting at the flying clouds of sand behind him. Izumi was simply standing and watching history in the making. Nuk joined her. I see you've taken my men, he noted. I'll pay them. Can pay you too if you help. I am helping. Me standing here enhances your prestige immeasurably. I'm famous, you know. Yes, I know. Good. Cool. So, where's the stealing you promised? It's here. The whole building? Yep. How far does it go down? Several hundred meters, Wodston sighed. Cool. But you know, it might be hard to find a buyer for it. For a rugged ninja like you? My clients usually expect better, that's all. Well, this is history. It's priceless. Looking for stuff that's price-full, actually? In that case, keep an eye on them for a while, would you? I'm going to see what else is around here. Sure, but I'm charging, Missy. Gonna get hot soon, too. Man, adventuring sucks.
Don't worry, Prince Tashino,
Isaiah called.
We'll be out of here and back into the thick of it in no time.
He was right, unfortunately. I mentioned already that Shobutai didn't have a skimmer problem, and they were right outside the town gate, so desert rebels wouldn't dare attack. But there was a third scourge in the Great Desert, the Manhunters. The Manhunters worked for noble families, like Nuk's, to find lost slaves and return them to their masters. The twist was that few cared if it was actually the same slave they got back. Therefore, the Manhunters would cut their working hours considerably by just picking up the first person they found, making them look like a slave, and collecting the ransom on them. It was perfectly legal and perfectly common, and hence when Izumi spotted a group of Manhunters coming in from the desert, she stopped feeling about the dunes for metal beneath the surface and bolted without hesitation. And of course, running away was exactly the sort of thing a real escaped slave would do, so that was the contract signed and sealed for the hunters. Escaped slave! The Manhunters cried as Izumi approached the town gate, drawing the attention of the guards, and indeed the nearby amateur archaeology crew. She's a slave? Fucking hell, Nuk said with a hand on his forehead.
That's not how this works, Prince. Come on!
Isaiah shouted, rushing off with Kelsey to join the pursuit.
Shall we join him, my prince?
Wodston asked, itching to go. Why? Let the police sort it out.
Izumi is carrying rather a lot of our money on account of the sponsorship, you see.
Wodston? How did a dreg like you end up being a doctor? Okran's fucking blood, come on then. Sprinting at full pelt, the gang cut into the chase behind Izumi but in front of the closest manhunter. The fact that some genuine vagrants were loitering outside the gate distracted most of the slavers with easy pickings, and only one went through the gate after Izumi. Once inside, he found Nuk, Isaiah and Kelsey blocking his path.
She's not yours, cur,
Isaiah growled. Yeah, she's mine, Nuk added, drawing angry shouts from Izumi. And who are you? Wearing noble clothes, huh? A thief? Out of my way! The manhunter demanded, stepping forwards and swinging a heavy club at the prince. Isaiah's sword clacked the blow aside, and a battle broke out, with Kelsey biting at the manhunter's legs, while her master and his master's master took turns with their blades. It would have been a victory for honour, righteousness, and so on, had the rest of the manhunters not piled down the steps from the gateway and called out for the samurai guards to intervene. It took a lot more than fighting in the street to get the guards to wake up, pull up their visors with eyes drawn on, and do their job. However, the manhunters were Shobatai's most lucrative industry, and required some level of indulgence to keep the coin levy, from which the guards took their hardly earned pay, afloat. That is why a legion of armoured warriors stormed Nuk and Company and quickly had them on the ground in varying degrees of consciousness. Happy to finally be relieved, the wounded manhunter gave Kalsi a thwack across the head with his club, reopening her recent wounds. You think someone with the temperament for kidnapping and slavery wouldn't hold back from hurting a dog? I hope you begin to understand the degree of evil we're talking about here. Nuk, Wodston and Isaiah struggled in the sand as their hands were bound and their feet shackled. Kalsi lay silently nearby, twitching around as blood started to pool. Only Azumi was absent, having continued her flight when she saw the guards take interest. She had slipped into a nearby store, chased by a manhunter, but when they started fighting, the store security decked them both. Thus Azumi now crawled from the shop with an injured leg, but without any scrutiny from the lethargic law. Nuk and Wodston had already been dragged off to jail, and she got outside just in time to see the manhunters pick up an injured Isaiah and take him in the opposite direction, towards the slave market. She started making her way towards Kalsi, but could only hobble after taking a bone-splintering kick during the melee. By the time she reached the poor dog, it was too late. Azumi was left sitting in the street, looking dangerously vagrant, suddenly alone again. Tradition dictated that in a situation like this, she should skip town and try her luck elsewhere. She had done as much with her last crew. Indeed, she had all the money she needed for a while, thanks to Wodston. But guilt was keeping her still, anchoring her there on the spot where those strange folk had stood up for her and lost nearly everything in an instant because of it. Azumi made her choice. She endured the painful journey to the police station and whacked the strings of coin Wodston had entrusted her with down on the police chief's desk. Nuk and Wodston's charges were dropped without hesitation. Wasn't even that expensive. The police strategy was more about volume of sales than high profit margins, with the main goal being to expand their market share. The RMBB Justice Initiative, or recurrent minor bribes and bails, was reaching wider, poorer and less criminal demographics than ever before, so can only be lauded as a success. The police had patched the pair up, but Nuk was in a groggy stupor and refused to get out of his cage. Immediately bored, the police left Azumi the key and went back to reading their light adventure novels and debating how certain words from Old Earth Japanese were meant to be pronounced.
Miss Azumi, you have our eternal thanks, Wodston said, coming to join her at Nuk's cage.
This was my fault. I'm so sorry. I never thought this would happen. I just wanted to learn what the ancients did here. Why did it end up like this?
History girl, Nuk spluttered. You owe me.
I will do what I can, Prince Tashino. I will make this up to you. I'll work for your, consent thingy guild.
Non-consensual private healthcare. But where is Isaiah?
They took him to the market. Here, the rest of the money,
Azumi said, handing all she had over to Wodston. Wodston understood the seriousness of the situation and hurried to purchase himself one prime condition albino shek before that rare specimen was off the market. Azumi sat on the floor and did what she could to ease the strain on her leg, while Nuk's mumbling gradually became more and more coherent.
I did it, Dad. I'm a ninja. Ninja. That's right, Prince Tashino. You were very brave, like a ninja.
Oh, thanks, Mum. I thought you left.
By his blood, I'm not getting into this.
Azumi left Nuk a note, and when the prince awoke, he followed the directions on it to the back of the town where the party was finally regrouping around a campfire. Isaiah was even less mobile than Azumi and lay on the floor with his hands over his face.
So, that was a fucking mess,
Nuk said when he arrived.
It was all a misunderstanding,
Wodston sighed. Well, you say that. So History Girl isn't an escaped slave then?
No, they're corrupt,
Azumi insisted. Corrupt? Why would they be corrupt? Nuk asked. Azumi was aghast.
I can't... You really think... It's like you've never left your palace once in your life.
I've been to the bar, like 8 times, actually.
You are the most incredible thing, you know that.
Wodston was made very jealous by this remark, by his own mistake. I am a literal prince, so don't go giving me your dreg lectures, Nuk said, dismissing Azumi with a hand wave as he was accustomed to doing with his servants. Now, what's the plan? Isaiah, my man, where's Kelsey? The look on the others' faces gave Nuk his answer. He went to sit beside Isaiah. You okay, man?
I'm afraid not, Prince Tashino. I think I shall have to leave your services.
What? Why?
There is something I must do. You do not need to be involved.
I'm literally here to be involved in your shit, man. What is it?
Revenge on those damn slavers. They stole my sword and killed my dog.
Man, you're wrong. They killed our dog. Nuk put a hand on Isaiah's scaly shoulder and looked the Shek in the eyes. We're gonna burn their racket to the ground, starting right fucking now. Nuk leapt up and started making space in his rucksack.
What are you planning to do, my prince?
Wodston asked, wondering if they were about to be cast from pan to fire. Payback. Literal payback. I'll get our money back. Revenge Part 1. No. Revenge, Episode 1. The Phantom Pennies. And how are you going to do that? Azumi asked, genuinely curious. Ninja business, Nuk quipped. With that, he swung up his bag and stamped away.
Ninja business? You're not a real ninja, Prince Tashino,
Izumi called. Nuk snapped back around and pointed at his torn t-shirt headdress. Uh-huh. There's a reason I wear this, you know.
That's surprising.
You'll see. They'll all see. And with those words, Nuk disappeared into the night, although only because he slipped on a sandbank and rolled out of sight. The others were left to rest and recover mind and body after their ordeal, while Nuk paid a little visit to the slaver's shop. His plan to break into the place and rob them clean was scuppered when he discovered the place was open 24 hours. What would be the appeal of living in a stinky town if you couldn't pop down the shops at 3 AM and get a new slave? He had to just walk around awkwardly and pretend to be a customer, which was extra hard for a man who had never bought anything from a store in his life. Once he was sure the guards weren't looking, he managed to swipe various bits and bobs from a workbench, including a couple of dried cactus strips and a broken angle grinder. Even the most heroic of shadowy thieves starts somewhere, you know. And why start if you don't mean to continue? The next morning, the crew discussed a return to the dig site. They were now in want of money, and even if they couldn't excavate anything good, they could collect up the stuff on the surface and sell it for scrap. Nuk ordered them to get to work.
My prince, why don't we return to the capital instead?
Wodston asked. Nuk shot him a foul look. They killed Kelsey, and who knows what they've done with her remains. This town's a disgrace, and we'll make them pay, somehow. I won't stop until I've cost them at least... Isaiah, how much was Kelsey?
About 3,000,
Isaiah said, returning his hands to his face as the topic got to him. Yeah, well, like more than that and stuff. You guys do what dregs must, etc. Hope you find some history or whatever. Thus, while the crew laboured in the desert heat to earn their daily bread, good for sandwiches with emphasis on the sand, Nuk stalked the town. He visited the police station, claiming to be inspecting his men. They hit the one shrug minimum mandated response and returned to their old pocket monster card game, while Nuk walked up and down the storeroom, cursing under his breath at how every locker, chest and cupboard was empty. All the actual police equipment had been sold long ago. How do you think the chief was able to afford that shiny orange dragon card that dazzled his men as it slid coolly across the tabular battlefield? With his plan literally foiled, Nuk went to the bar for a lunchtime tipple. It was a working lunch, of course, for he was taking inventory of that which was not nailed down in the establishment. Bad news, it was all guarded by mercenaries. Worse news, they were out of rum. Amid his protests, Nuk learned that the rum had supposedly been stolen the previous night. Either Nuk had got so drunk from his spoils that he forgot the spoiling, or there was another sleuth in these here sands. Only a man as familiar with the scent of rum as Nuk could have found this thief. The trail was mixed with 1,000 other, far more pungent scents, shall we say, the reason for which quickly became clear. The rum wrangler of Shobitai was slumped in the latrines below the wall. Nuk tightened the binding of the shirt around his nose and approached. "Hey kid," he called out, taking a coin from his pocket. "Catch." He casually flicked the coin towards the fat, bloated Shek sitting there in front of him. It landed far short of the mark, and the Shek didn't move.
Not gonna fall for it, he chirped.
"You're going to fall into something far worse if you keep lounging there, my man." Nuk got as close as he could endure before continuing. "You must be hungry after all that rum."
I didn't do it.
"Really?"
Fine, okay, I did it. But you'll never take me alive.
"I won't?"
Unless you really want to. I mean,
Indeed. I heard that you, my man, were the world-famous rum thief of Shobitai.
Am I?
Yes, I'd say so.
Wow. World famous.
And it gets better. I happen to need the services of a man with a certain set of skills, who isn't afraid to get dirty. Man, why am I sweet-talking a fat guy on the bog? Is this part of adventuring? The Shek laughed and finally stood from the latrine and closed the door. Then he hesitated.
Wait, I told you I won't fall for it.
If you need more time in there, I can wait. Elsewhere, that is.
No, you're a noble man. You're gonna turn me in for a bounty.
You're right to be scared. I am a powerful man indeed. But that just means this town has made a powerful enemy by wronging me and my friends. I'm a ninja, you see.
A ninja?
Yes, and I'm looking for another soul as powerful as mine to aid me in my quest. A noble quest.
Really?
And it gets better, kid. I'm willing to pay, 300 New Empire cats for the pleasure. Is that a lot?
Oh, I'll do it! Pick me!
Consider yourself picked. Bog dweller and a corpse carrier. I'm starting a bloody reject Shek collection. Your name?
Name? At home they call me Bloody Els.
Bloody Els. They've got you good, kid. I'll call you Charlie. Come on, Charlie, we've got a town to plunder. Or at least we'll kick up a literal stink. Man. And that's how Ninja Nuk got himself a willing stooge to up the game in his plan to punish Shobitai. This strange ogre that emerged from the latrine was actually more than met the eye, although less than met the nose. In fact, the prince's mission of revenge, and indeed his very life, would soon depend on the lumbering mass of bloody Charlie Els. Whatever did the pauper prince do to deserve this? "Who the fuck are you? Get out!" the woman shouted. Els turned around without a word and went back outside. "So they're at home then?" Nuk asked, leant against the wall outside.
Yeah, there's a lady in there.
Ooh, how scary. Sneak in and steal something. This was Nuk's new idea to punish Shobitai for draining his coffers and killing his adventuring instructor's pet dog. By stealing the crockery from some local woman's kitchen, he was probably teaching the roving bands of slavers a lesson. Or something. Sometimes the logic of a professional ninja is characteristically hard to detect. The homeowner had gone upstairs for a moment, and so Els made his move. While the Shek were, as a species, quite big and noisy, Els had a special gift. He had soft scales on his feet that muffled the sound of his footsteps. Thus the only sound he made as he snuck was the ruffle of his discoloured cargo shorts, and then soon the clattering of the crud bundle he had under his arms. "Good work, old chap. Wow, you stole a fucking steak off the grill! Still piping hot, you madman!"
I thought you wanted me to do it.
"You thought right, my man. Come on, hide the crap in my bag. I've already lined up our next target." Outside the town, the gang had got a good taste of the sort of work Azumi did rummaging through 3,000-year-old junk, and now she was getting a taste of what the guild that sponsored her was about.
"Another one!"
Isaiah called. Wodston rushed over and knelt beside the vagrant. The local samurai had beaten up a few wanderers for breaking the law against looking tired and hungry in sight of a nobleman's estate. Now Wodston was assessing the severity of the wounds and, more importantly, the likely sale value of the man's walking stick. "So this is non-consensual private healthcare. You rob the dying," Izumi said.
We provide a valuable service and manage the patient's credit through a system of direct debit,"
Wodston explained.
"And I carry the corpses,"
Isaiah added.
"I think that's all we can do for this one,"
Wodston was saying. Izumi stooped down and pulled a roll of coins from underneath the patient/victim.
"Oh, well done, Miss Azumi. I think I'll get his arm splintered in that case. Have you considered becoming a credit manager?"
"Seems like I'll pay you back faster this way," Izumi said, feeling the weight of the coins in her hand, yet not the guilt of theft. Such was the wonder of Wodston's miracle method. They got the job done, and paired with the scrap metal they sold from Azumi's work, they got more than enough money for food and shelter. But the day's work wasn't over. In the darkness of the general store, Nuk and Els huddled in the corner. "This fucking place is open 24 hours as well," Nuk whispered.
"Oh, well, when does it close then?"
"My rancid friend, you mustn't ask questions. Just hold the bag open, will you?" With that, Nuk started dragging armfuls of miscellany towards Els's rucksack. The clattering drew the attention of a guard, who wandered over. "My friend, I'm so sorry. They were out of stock, and I know how much you wanted that, Nuk took a peek into the bag. "White lump... Oh, it's a fucking bowl. The white bowl you wanted. It's out of stock. That's what I'm saying to you, my friend."
"I don't want to buy a bowl. We've already got one, remember?"
Els said. Nuk laughed heartily, pushing Els past the two guards approaching them, and out the door. "You fool! We've no bowls! They were out of stock! The shelf was bare before we arrived, remember? I just told you. Typical Shek! Come on, my man." Somehow the pair left without incident, and crashed their bags down at the guild's camp. The noise startled Wodston awake, but he soon fell back asleep, hearing Nuk purring something about phantom pennies to himself. In the morning, Nuk proposed that they leave town to go offload their haul in marketplaces that weren't awash with talk of stolen ceramics. "I don't think I'm going to get much work done here, am I?" Izumi said. "All this dig has taught us is why no one was digging out here before."
"That's not entirely true, Miss Azumi,"
Wodston said, his face reddening all of a sudden.
"I think we learned a thing or two about the strength of your character in the face of adversity. We all owe you our lives."
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Nuk jumped in. "I don't owe History Girl my life, it's the other way around. I was protecting her honor." "Your guide here was protecting me," Izumi retorted. "And you just spent all night robbing innocents." "Innocents? Look, I stole this stuff because of you." "A gentleman indeed. I suppose the people here live from the profits of those damn manhunters." Yes, exactly what you said there. That was going somewhere, wasn't it? It goes somewhere where I'm right, doesn't it, Charlie?
"I just done what you told me, master."
"Don't call him master. He doesn't like it,"
Wodston said. Nuk shook his head. No, it's fine. It's a different thing here, okay? Don't worry. Izumi, you're now my official robbery justification consultant, okay? No? Great. Now let's go fence this shit somewhere, get rich, then come back and do it again.
"You really don't need to keep doing this,"
Isaiah said. "Oh yes we do, man. We're taking these slavers all the way down. We're gonna keep taking their shid until the only thing they have left is their actual shid. And then Charlie here will probably get on that too. Don't ask." Soon the crew filed out through the gates, joining a departing merchant caravan. The caravan was headed to Stoat, a town west of the capital of Heft, also on the lip of the desert. It was the long way home, but there were customers to attend to along the road, so it was by no means wasted time. About halfway to Stoat there was a mining camp, outside which the crew came across a man hobbling around in shackles, a real escaped slave. Nuk jumped into action.
What are you doing?
The man croaked. Hold still, superdreg, Nuk said. After a great deal of rattling about with an iron nail in the shackle's lock, they snapped open. The man was lost for words, and ran off at once in a kind of euphoric panic.
Prince of the Empire freeing slaves? Very bad,
Izumi commented.
Then spin it. Revenge? Sudden burst of morality, perhaps?
First one. Come on, I want to take a look at this slave stuff. Morality. Grow up. Nuk led the band away from the caravan and into the mining camp. While the United Cities Empire was powered by slavery, nobles like Nuk didn't see very much of it, for the labours and privations were confined to work camps like the one they were in. Everywhere men and women were mining stone and loading it onto pack beasts to be sold in Shobutai. There were almost as many guards, ensuring not a single enslaved breath was not put to good use. When Nuk announced who he was, his party was allowed to browse the stock freely.
Wodston, my man, did you know about all this?
Nuk asked.
I had a certain idea, my prince.
Is this what slaves do? Just this?
And similar labours.
Man, and you can just get thrown into this mess. History Girl was nearly out here.
I'm sure once everyone realised the mistake, things would have been rectified.
Wodston didn't try very hard to make his words carry any conviction. Right, we're getting revenge for this too.
My prince?
Don't worry yourself, I'll arrange it. Come on. Their brief visit was over, and Nuk was clearly upset to learn of the very thing that his empire was world famous for. Or so communications manager Izumi would have you believe. Perhaps in truth the burgeoning ninja just wanted an excuse for the string of burglaries he was planning for Stoat's slave trading house. On the other hand, you and I, who know Nuk fairly well by now, might argue that he wasn't the sort of fellow to require excuses for his impulses. Whatever the case, the brief overnighting in Stoat left Wodston awkwardly carrying a rolled-up rug and everyone's bags bulging with a smorgasbord of semi-valuable bits, bobs, misc and other. They now faced a day-long trek across the soft white sands that ran down from the Heng Highlands on the desert's southern edge.
Where are you from then, Charlie?
Isaiah asked the new Shek.
I'm from the Shek Kingdom. Yes. Any town in particular? Not really.
Ah, perhaps I understand you.
Have you been to Admag recently? No. What's Admag?
It's the capital. The Queen lives there.
Oh, I know the Queen.
As do I, as it happens.
Are you from Admag?
Indeed I am.
Then why are you here?
Well, the story there is in my very image.
Because you're fat.
What? No, because You're the fat one!
Yeah, it's from rum.
And I suspect other deficiencies share a similar cause.
What?
Exactly. Heft was the same old, same old. A giant battle was underway between a platoon of samurai and a lumbering, towering skimmer, big enough to be the king of all skimmers, and had already been raging for hours. Peace at last, Nuk declared as they walked on by the struggle and over towards the stuffy little WNCPHGHQ. While the others were happy for the rest and the protection of a more loyal brand of lawbringer, Nuk had been scheming for the whole trip and couldn't wait to put his new plan into action. He rushed off to the north end of the city to visit his old partners in the hashish business, the ring of shinobi smugglers, known to some as the Thieves' Guild.
Boy, who's this mysterious disguised man walking up on my tower?
The thief boss said as Nuk approached. I'm a passing ninja with an interesting proposition for you, Nuk said.
Oh yeah? How about you hand over the $5,000 you owe me?
What? I know not of what you speak, kind sir.
Tashino, take that thing off your head.
Tashino? Who is Tashino?
Where's my $5,000? I've got a receipt here that says you ordered, to quote, a fugload of hashish, and you got it. Pay up and I'll spare your life.
You can't kill me.
Why not?
I'm the prince.
Whoops, my mistake. Okay, 10 grand.
Look, fine. Okay, it's me. I've got some stuff for you. Good stuff. I've been doing a little ninjaing, you see.
Oh, you're getting into the business, are you?
Freelance credit management and unannounced product recall. I've got a lot of work to do in the palace.
Really?
Yeah. Why don't you sign me up and you can take the stuff off my hands?
Sure. That'll be 10 grand.
I'll give you this broken angle grinder if you make it 5.
I won't increase it to 20 if you agree right now.
Deal! Almost all of the Tashino Credit Management Guild's capital was forked over in exchange for official membership of the Shinobi Thieves Network, a worldwide band of grey market traders. It wasn't as cool as being a ninja, but Nuk wasn't going to let that stop him buying all the official Shinobi merch with the money he made fencing the halls from his adventure/business trip. At last he actually began to appear somewhat disguised, swapping his vibrant robes for an edgy black rag shirt and a Chief Thief brand black designer rucksack. He rushed home to show his friends how cool he was now, but they were selfishly asleep. They'd need all the sleep they could get to cope with discovering what happened to all their money. In the meantime, Nuk went out for his first night on the job. He walked up to his father's palace and did something akin to sneaking inside. Well, let's be honest, he walked in through the front door dressed like an old sock in need of retirement. But the guards recognized the prince and decided not to intervene with his rummaging about the palace. Thus, the amateur shinobi, with union dues fully paid, had a very successful shift at the surprisingly in need of recall products depot. In the morning, he popped his head around the door of Wodston's shed.
I swear I locked it up,
Isaiah was saying.
You've cost us all of our money. Those insatiable thieves,
Wodston moaned. Enter Nuk.
You've been fooled, my man.
What the fug are you wearing, Your Majesty?
Izumi asked. This is my shinobi uniform.
No, it's not.
10,000 cats says otherwise.
We're missing exactly 10,000 cats,
Isaiah said. Oh, by the way, a cat was the unit of currency in the Empire, so don't get the wrong idea here.
My prince, you haven't fallen in with the thieves of the tower, have you?
Wodston asked. Technically, no. We all have.
My prince?
That's right. The Wadman Non-Conceptual Health Guild is now an associate member of the Union of Shinobi Thieves.
10,000 cats,
Isaiah lamented. Maybe he was thinking about the animal. I don't know.
My prince, are you sure that's a wise investment? Or an investment at all?
Wodston, how much do you think we're going to steal from those slavers? Less than 10 grand? I'll make the money back stealing Dad's shed alone.
You've been robbing the palace again?
No, I was out helping the poor learn to ride bloody skimmers. Of course I'm robbing Dad. I feel that's the sort of thing you shouldn't shout about, Izumi commented. Well, history girl, you probably think actions speak louder than words, don't you? What? Are you accusing me of something? You sit there, saying that stealing is wrong, but I don't see you stealing anything. That's not exactly an argument, or even a real sentence. Then forget the words. It's time for action. Follow me. The confused guild went with Nuk to the Shinobi Tower by the North Gate. It turns out that this union of thieves offered all kinds of membership perks: childcare, bed and breakfast, free haircuts, and most importantly of all for Nuk, a thievery enrichment program. Courses such as deconstructing tropes in common locksmithing, a history of spinal severance, and the ever-popular corpse looting for intermediates all promised to enrich students in quite the literal sense. Nuk had signed the whole gang up for some intensive training ahead of what he referred to as Revenge Episode 2, Piddler on the Roof. As it happens, What precisely this entailed was not destined to come to light. Probably for the best, really. Nuk's perfectly laid plans had one fatal flaw: Nuk Tashino. While his friends were at stealing school, he was out on a field trip. He walked up to the palace doors, pushing an old wheelbarrow in front of him. He waved his hands at the guards.
"I'm not the thief you're looking for,"
he said, his voice muffled by a flap of the t-shirt in his mouth.
"Prince Tashino, heard you'd be back. Go on then,"
the guard sighed. About an hour later, Nuk huffed and puffed his way back out, with the wheelbarrow filled with light fixtures, tableware, board game pieces, and even handfuls of loose grains and flour. Thorough, gotta give him that. Only problem was that the guards stepped out to block his path.
"Not stealing this barrow of imperial property, are you, my prince?"
the guard asked. "No, I'm going to donate them to the poor," Nuk replied sarcastically.
"So shall I take that as a yes, my prince?"
"No! This, you dreg, is credit, and I am its manager. As you are not the account holder, I cannot give out confidential information on its origin, destination, or black market resale value."
"Would you step away from the barrow for a moment, my prince?"
More guards appeared from behind him. Oh dear. You dregs! I let you smoke my fucking hashish! Just let me go, alright?"
"Afraid we've got orders from the Emperor, my prince. I see you've got his shoes in your barrow there."
"They were recalled by the manufacturer."
"And our contacts in the Shinobi tell me you've signed your guild up for the deluxe steel deal imperial package. Not planning any criminal activity, are you, my prince?"
A back and forth of much the same nature as you've already heard went on for some time. While the prince was distracted by alternately arguing with and insulting the guard, his loot was steadily returned to its place by the palace staff, and a pair of shackles was clamped around his ankles.
"You insufferable double dreg shids!"
Nuk shouted.
"My father will hear of this insult."
3, 2, 1, let's jam! His father was singing upstairs, doors locked, volume up, clothes a thing of only distant memory. Nuk was pushed down the palace ramp and told that his exile began for real now.
"We've organised a little trip for you, my prince,"
the guard said. With the comic timing of the old masters, a foot was extended, Nuk was upended, and his face smashed into the coarse metal at the ramp's base. The loud laughter from the guards attracted the attention of Isaiah, who was doing some homework in the nearby guild HQ. The do's and do's of sewer sleuthing was not the most interesting of required reading, so he walked outside, just in time to see an unconscious Nuk being carried into the jail across the road.
See what cards he has,
one of the police was excitedly saying. Isaiah rushed after them to investigate. Not the card thing, the Nuk being arrested thing. He arrived to see Nuk being fussed over in a prison cage by a huge gang of manhunters. Bad news. Manhunters often broke people out of prison to add to their stocks, which saved the police time as well, so it was all above board.
"I hope you're not considering laying your hands on the Prince of the Empire,"
Isaiah lectured them. They didn't like it. "Well, you know too much, don't you? That's illegal," one claimed. The group piled on the poor Shek and locked him up in one of the cages. Then one of them dragged Nuk outside. That is how disaster struck our poor crew. Denied their inspirational leader, and with their adventuring instructor falsely imprisoned, how could they go on? Well, to be honest, they didn't even notice for a pretty long time. But eventually it would be time for action, and sitting through that jailbreaking for busy professionals course would very much pay off. Nuk tried to open his eyes. Wasn't happening.
"Wodston, it was the bad green,"
he mumbled. This attracted the attention of someone nearby.
"Finally, welcome to slavery. I'm obligated to provide you with the following orientation talk."
A slaver got out some notes and began reading aloud before Nuk slumped in a cage.
"The party to whom you have been indentured, hereby referred to as your master or masters, reserves the right to impose upon you any and all terms as detailed in Section 2 of the Slave Handbook. Insofar as these provisions allow, you, hereby referred to as the slave, are to adhere to the express will of the master in a manner deemed convenient by the master or representatives thereof. As the sun set on Section 1, Clause 4, Volume 1, Nuk finally heard enough words to work out what was going on here. His head had been cruelly shaven and his ninja sword stolen away. All he had left was his designer ninja rag shirt, which the slavers had foolishly mistaken for the actual rags common to their clientele. The prince of the empire was now its slave. The next morning he was dragged out of his cage and pointed at a big pile of rocks.
Alright boy, listen up,
A slaver said.
I'm the fucking prince. Listen to me, you dreg.
Nuk earned himself a slap across the face.
don't be rude. It violates Section 4, Subsection 8 of the 7th edition of the Slaves Code.
Oh yeah? Well, what can I say? My copy must have been tampered with. It was just a load of weird drawings of girls in ancient uniforms getting all red in the face around some guy.
Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, Yasuke, the slaver sighed.
Just be quiet, right? See that big rock? We need rocks smaller than that. Have fun.
Now Nuk got to really experience the labour he'd seen near Shobutai. Hit the rock, round the clock. You were allowed the freedom to choose which part of the rock to hit next. Slaves never used to have it that good, the talk around the camp claimed. That was Nuk's life settled then. Or it would have been if a curious Wodston hadn't wondered why things were so quiet, peaceful, and almost happy back in the capital. He took an educated guess and checked the prison, finding Isaiah to his surprise, and then learning the truth of the matter.
I'm sorry, Isaiah. I must go to him as soon as I can. We shall return for you, I promise,
Wodston said.
Worry not, Mr. Wodston. I've stood in one of these cages for far longer, and you have a duty to your master. I'm sure he would do the same for you.
The heat in here has you deluded. I'll fetch some water.
Even a mere undergraduate in jailbreaking knew that it was best to focus on a single breakout at any given time. Therefore, Wodston left Isaiah in the sizzling slammer for now, and rushed to join his classmates in the tower. I thought he'd last at least another day, Izumi said.
So we have to steal the master. I'll do it.
Els chirped.
We'll see, Charlie. We need to work together. Prince Tashino is relying on us to save him,
Wodston said. Once those idiots rescue me, I'm gonna kill them for letting this happen, Nuk muttered to himself. Ooh, there's a spot no one's hit yet, quickly! Ah, so satisfying. The romance of a summer slave never dies. Well, he probably wasn't thinking that, but the guards were. Seeing virgin slabs of sweet quarry going to waste day after day, no wonder they were so tense. Anyway, Izumi, Els and Wodston pooled their collective brainpower to come up with a rescue plan. And then, with the markets in decline, the nobles will visit the camp to lay off workers, Izumi was explaining. We'll use the disguises we acquired in the second stage to infiltrate their entourage. That's where the cardboard skimmers come in. It was a genius scheme that would allow the trio to sweep Nuk away from under the slavers' noses. What's better, hearing the plan inspired an even better one from the bottomless mind of bloody Charlie Els, one that would achieve the very same goal in far fewer words. So it was that the next afternoon, Wodston announced his intention to purchase a slave at the gates of the stone mining camp south of the capital. Allowed entry, he left Izumi and Els to keep watch by the gates while he searched for Nuk. He was easy enough to find.
Look at these hands.
Nuk was shouting.
Do these look like hands that could ever harm an innocent rock?
They love it,
a guard claimed.
You know, gets their rocks off.
By his blood, you mean like, oh, Mina-senpai, harder please.
Oh, wait. Do you know how to draw? We gotta hear this one out.
Nuk's promotion was interrupted by Wodston.
Prince Tashino, you're okay,
he said. Wodston, where the fuck have you been?
On our way here, my prince.
I got here in like 2 hours and I was bloody blacked out.
Well, we had to develop a plan to ensure your successful rescue, my prince. Your apprentice proved most helpful in that regard.
Apprentice?
The portly Shek, Charlie.
He's still... You didn't get rid of him.
Oi! The guard interrupted. Are you here to buy this thing or not? He's worth a lot to us, you know.
I'm sure his father would be happy to hear someone say that of him,
Wodston said with a smile. Wodston, my man, they've been here with these fucking rocks far too long, let me assure you of that. Now, would you care to execute this amazing plan you spent a bloody day concocting?
At once, my prince. Excuse me, guards, everyone. Did you ever hear the story of... Oh, wait, what's that over there?
Wodston cried, pointing in a vague direction. Then he scooped Nuk up over his shoulder and absolutely legged it. From under the noses of the guards indeed. Wodston may have been an aged fellow, but his hard work kept him supple and unusually powerful. The guards could hardly keep up with him as he dashed, and whenever they got close enough to thwack at him with their clubs, he dodged the blows with ease. The element of surprise helped too. The guards at the gate didn't believe the man running at them with a slave on his shoulder could really be pulling a fast one. Who would be so brazen? A man with a duty to his prince, and not enough time to cut out a load of cardboard skimmers, is the answer. Still, after clearing the camp and running up a nearby rocky embankment, Nuk's flailing got the better of him, he stumbled, and a guard clobbered him to the ground. Nuk rolled out of the crash and was immediately on his feet and running. The guards didn't pursue. Finally they knew their place. Or, more accurately, it was the usual lack of care at play. They were happy to just enslave Wodston instead. Was this what the loyal servant deserved? Surely not. Luckily, the mastermind of the breakout was already in a huff about not being trusted to carry it out himself. Now, as he and Azumi rushed out and saw Wodston being led back down to the camp, Els had his time to shine.
Bloody elves, here he comes again!
The Shek shouted as he charged. A battle cry, perhaps? He swept Wodston away with little effort, and thus now the guards were chasing him. The big chap had quite the pair of legs on him though, and they couldn't keep up. Azumi found Nuk breaking open his shackles just beyond the embankment. "You're still around too," Nuk said.
Great to see you too, Prince Tashino. Come on.
If you were dead or gone or whatever, I'd have said you were history.
Incredibly funny. You're like a ninja of comedy. The laughs are gone before you even know they were there. Now let's fucking move.
All right, calm down. And I thought I was the one who got shafted. They joined Els and Wodston dashing south over the lumpy bluffs of Heng. Only a single guard was able to keep up, and as the chase wore on and the darkness of night fell, even he realized he didn't actually care. Thus the crew disappeared into some shadowy crags just a stone's throw from one of the many united cities of Nuk's empire, a prosperous market named Trader's Edge. Not that they were to enjoy its comforts that night. With talk of escaped slaves abound, best not to stride into town wearing little else than shackles and a smile. They would enjoy the cold, dry skimmer steaks from Wodston's rucksack al fresco.
Took your time, didn't you?
Nuk began. It was time to deploy the admonishment he'd been mentally preparing all day.
They took your hair,
Azumi quipped in response. She wasn't wrong. Nuk and Wodston had been balded, for in the United Cities to have hair was to be free. It's cheaper than ID papers, right? Luckily for the gang, this was a physical and psychological sore spot of Nuk's, and so his tirade was cancelled in favour of huffing, puffing, growling and scowling on the ground.
I stole you, I did.
Els said to Wodston.
Yes, well done, Charlie.
That means you're mine.
No, sorry to say.
Uh-huh, that's what they said at stealing school.
Yes, but those lofty academics don't know what it's like in the real world.
Don't they?
No, not at all. Not like the Lady Izumi here.
Lady Izumi?
Izumi asked.
I mean, not to say that you are a lady, strictly speaking.
She's a man?
Els asked.
I'm whatever you want me to be, my hideous friend,
Izumi said.
Oh, she said I'm her friend.
Els was satisfied with the result of the conversation, it seems. They relaxed on the cool sands, with the odd ear and eye open for manhunters, but their choice of crag had been quite wise in the end, for it was hidden from man and beast alike, with many local amenities in walking distance. The latter point was to come in very useful in the morning. Nuk and Wodston needed hats to avoid suspicion, and the group as a whole were collectively sharing one or two too few items of clothing, with Nuk bottomless and Els topless. Izumi was happy to volunteer coin to resolve this. "Take Charlie as your bodyguard," Nuk ordered.
He's a little, or a lot, he draws attention, doesn't he?
Izumi complained. "Yes, exactly. If you get into trouble, he'll buy you plenty of time."
I don't buy things, I take 'em,
Els proudly claimed. "Yes, well, take a few sword blows for Our Lady here if you have to, alright?"
Yes, master, nothing I can't take.
"You've understood me perfectly. Off you go then, before I get fucking sunburn up here." The slaves were left in their nook, while the grubby girl and sizable Shek went shopping. This town, Trader's Edge, was quite a good spot for it. It had a whole tower dedicated to selling clothes. Anything you could ever want, as long as it's brown. Sums the whole world up, really. They did have some more exciting items in the bargain barrel, to which Izumi's handful of cats just about stretched. Their haul had the two slaves looking perfectly presentable. Wodston was particularly impressed.
Miss Izumi, how did you know?
"Know what?"
My size, my colour, my smell.
"What?"
It's just like my old gi from the palace. You're so thoughtful. I didn't...
"Didn't?"
I've never seen such care.
Izumi felt somehow that telling him it probably was the very same clothes he had been wearing before, flogged off here by the slavers, could hurt his feelings. Nuk was now rocking a grey turtleneck and a wide casa sun hat, like a ninja who had important office paperwork to attend to. All in all, the group appeared somewhat less like the two men, woman and a Shek who had been reported by the slavers the previous day. No one would suspect a thing. In reality, Wodston had already explained to Nuk that they would need to lie low for a lot longer before they could walk the roads freely again. Nuk liked the idea of lying, but low wasn't his style. How fortunate that the prince had made investments wiser than any could have predicted. There was a branch of the Thieves' Guild at the far end of Trader's Edge. Thus Nuk and company rushed into town, their disguises holding long enough to get them into the shady thief tower. "Hello, friends," Nuk said, a sword at his neck as soon as he passed through the door. "Members only," a faceless shinobi grunted. "Members? I'm the bloody chief thief," Nuk said, showing off his expensive label bag. "Oh, you're a rich idiot. Alright then. Bed and board, is it?" "Bed and fun, hopefully." "Definitely an idiot then. Got money?" "Of course," Nuk bluffed. In this way he was put up on the roof of the tower. Great views, very private, and what hotel did daily courses in murder down in the rec room? Even skeptical Izumi had to admit that the prospect of lounging around and attending the odd lecture sounded pretty good, all paid for with good old-fashioned student debt, or shinobi debt in this case. So there we shall leave our heroes for now, but alas we are missing someone, aren't we? Well, the champion Isaiah was himself about to embark to a far less luxurious land of low-laying. In the middle of the night he heard all the police in the station gathering downstairs for something called the Gen 1 Keepsake Sweepstakes, which kicked up a lot of hooting, crying, and the occasional refrain of a song about, to quote, being the very best. As they sang such words, the prisoner they were meant to be guarding carefully dislodged the bolt on his cage and crept out onto the rear balcony. Nice to get a bit of air, but he was still trapped. The only way out of the station was through the front door. Without Nuk and friends to create a distraction, he had no chance to escape. So instead he would just have to chill, looking up at the same sky as the others, eating the same hairy, crusty steaks peeled from the inside of a rucksack as the others, and waiting for fate to reunite them once more. At least Isaiah could feel proud. He didn't know exactly what happened to Nuk or the rescue attempt, but he felt certain that whatever was going on out there, the gang were having a grand old adventure. And somewhere, up among the stars, poor Kelsey was too. Ah, Isaiah, don't worry, your fellow prince has not forgotten about you. Quite the opposite. Trader's Edge was a wealthy slaving town, with shelves packed with loose revenge. It was time for a high synergy working vacation, worthy of that turtleneck. The guard could tell something was wrong. All the slave cages on the second floor of the shop were unlocked. But how? He couldn't tell the owner. After all, it had been his own responsibility to lock them. Had he forgotten? A true mystery. Just lucky he came by before all the slaves went walkabouts. His eyes passed from one end of the rooftop showroom to the other. Nothing. Then he focused on fixing the locks, his eyes just barely grazing over the Shek sitting on the floor 2 feet in front of him. This was bloody Charlie Els, and as long as he remained downwind of the authorities, he was nigh on invisible. There was something about him that simply didn't register in one's mind. The secret was his ability to slow his brain down to a crawl, preventing any nerves from firing, giving him absolute stillness. Wrapped in a crumpled, oversized coat, he simply looked like a pile of laundry to the untrained eye. Once the guard was satisfied that his incompetence was suitably hidden, he went back downstairs. Then the pile of laundry rustled to life.
Gonna get you out. Slavery is bad. It makes my master really sad.
The Shek hummed as he skillfully tumbled the locks on both the cage door and the shackles of its occupant. Some of the captives thanked him and waited for their moment to spring out and run. Others were happy to take their chances with the guards right now. Handy, for it provided Els the perfect chance to escape, and even the slave got a good deal. No one was going to buy a product with a crossbow bolt sticking out of it. So, what was all this? As mentioned, this city, Trader's Edge, was a hub of the United Cities slaver racket. Els was carrying out the wishes of his wanted master Nuk by punishing the locals for their complicity. The stealthy Shek cleared the shelves of the Traders Guild headquarters across town. Then he snuck into a restricted warehouse and pilfered thousands of cats worth of electronics, building materials and weapons. But then a guard rounded a corner and saw him. "What the fuck are you doing here?"
I'm just the laundry.
"Is that... You dirty bastard, get out! What were you doing? Ah, filthy Shek!" Els quickly trotted off, the huge bulge in his shorts that had unnerved the guard wobbling this way and that. He'd shoved a stolen prosthetic arm down there, you see. To hide it, probably. After that close call, he stuck to sticking his pickings into his ninja grab bag on loan from Nuk. The others slept the days away in the cool thieves' tower, while Els ravenously robbed the bars, the houses, the shops, the barracks, the police station. Demand for laundry services was through the roof, as the whole town discussed the huge piles of dirty rags they'd seen in all corners, and they swore they'd been cooking a steak on the grill just now. After a few days, Nuk was lying on the roof of the tower, with shiny golden cats over each eye and plenty more scattered around his bed. It's good to own the means of corruption. Wodston dared to interrupt his bathing in the wages of sin.
My prince, I heard a rumour that a caravan is heading back to the capital. I dare say the guards won't be on the lookout for us anymore, so why don't we go?
In response to this, Nuk ran his hands over the mounds of coins around him, creating small metal avalanches that tinkled this way and that.
My prince.
Hear that revenge? What's the rush?
Well, Isaiah.
Oh, you had to go right there, didn't you?
I'm sorry, my prince.
Look, I know we need to go, but I worked real hard at the stone-perving place. I guess I just figured that if I had a fuck ton of money, it would all be worth it.
I fear our hosts may feel the same. The bounty on our heads must be hard to resist.
Bounty? What are we talking here?
Azumi said that you're going for over 10,000 in the market square.
Oh, that's nice. 10,000. Imagine if you could get 10,000 cats for stealing just a single item.
Is anything so valuable, my prince?
I am. And I've got a bloody good idea. Charlie! Where's Charlie? I need a lift. Nuk's idea was indeed beyond brilliant. He had his filthy thrall carry him over to the police station.
I got a bounty.
Els announced. The police chief looked down at Nuk, who had just been slapped down on the table, all over the cards in play. He got me. What can I say? Pay the man. Or the thing. Pay that, Nuk said. The police chief huffed as he counted out 10 huge strings of cats for Els. Nuk let himself into a cage upstairs. Alright guys, don't mind me. Life sentence. Yeah, I know. No sense guarding me too much right now. You'll get bored of it. So let's pace ourselves here, Nuk said. The guards nodded at this thoughtful advice. When Els and Azumi came to visit the prisoner that night, he had been given his own floor of the prison all to himself, with no guards. Oi, what's going on down there? Nuk asked. I don't know. They've got visitors in. They're drawing little pictures of rocks or something, Azumi said. Oh, yes, Kay, Nuk sighed. What? I know, right? What an idiot. You read my mind. I see you're in prison, Your Majesty. Oh yeah, this whole thing. It's not to keep me in here, it's to keep the world away from me, you know. Prince Tashino, would you please shut up? Bloody police are nicer than you. What exactly do you want, history girl? We're here to fucking break you out. I'm not ready to go, actually. Yes, you are. Disgusting, stinky man thing, come break him out, Izumi ordered Els. Els began picking up the entire cage and walking out, but after some hushed panicking, Nuk was finally convinced to just fiddle the lock like he'd learned in shinobi school, and Els smuggled him outside. They got back to Wodston, guarding the fortune now gathered on the tower roof, and all in all, the operation had been a huge success. However, even as perfect a thing as this had one fatal flaw: Nuk Tashino. The next day, he had Els take him down to the station again.
Got another one. 10 money sticks, please,
Els said. The police chief looked up at the cheque.
Yeah, normally they put a moustache on them the second time round or something. New in town?
Yes, pleased to meet you, sir. My name's Bloody Els.
Bloody Els. Right, off you go then.
Thanks, bye.
Hang on a minute, Nuk interrupted, before the police chief stuffed a sock in his mouth. Thus, by pushing his luck too far, Nuk was imprisoned for real, and Azumi had to pay a full 20,000 cats to have the charges dropped. The police chief gave her a complimentary fake moustache though, and wished them better luck next time with a warm wave goodbye. Nice guy. History girl, Nuk began once they were outside. You must be recording my personal history, right? Why would I do that? Because I'm famous. I'm a statesman. That moustache is meant to go above your lip, by the way. Like you would know about that. Look, I want you to erase certain things from the record. Or I could preemptively erase everything by not writing anything? Huh. That's even better, right? I certainly think so. Nice. Good. You're no. A what? Say it, Prince. Well, I thought for a second that you were a good history girl. Ah, good enough to know you're wrong there. Which would make me right, right? Well, bugger. Can't outwit me. Now, watch me steal all those t-shirts over there. For revenge and stuff. Nuk and company stayed in Trader's Edge for a couple more days, redistributing the wealth they had lost back into their pockets. Let's check in with Isaiah, shall we? Well, he was still slumped on the second floor balcony of the Heft Police Headquarters, with no entertainment but the voices coming from the assembly hall below him.
So I present to you now a most important lesson, one was saying. I want you all to remember this. The 3 B's of policing: bounties, bribes, bail. Some scholars will come in here telling you there are actually 5 B's, but those other 2 are just bribe again. And I always say that if you have to ask for a bribe more than once, you're better off taking a bounty instead. So don't worry about that. Remember, in this business, the only 3 B's are the 3 B's.
Very educational. At least the worst was over. A couple of days later, Nuk, Wodston, Azumi and Els settled their tab at the Thieves' Tower, paying it with t-shirts like respectable guests, and set off for Heft, having cost Trader's Edge tens of thousands in missing property and freed a couple of slaves along the way. Pretty nice, but after that whole ordeal, Revenge was going to be getting a lot more episodes, with pre-production on episode 6, Eternal Fun Times of the Topless Kind, well underway, although what Els had meant when he suggested that title remained unclear. They arrived that evening after a tiring desert march, but there was still work to do. And by that, I of course mean there was still work for Wodston to do. The doctor went back to the prison cage where he had left Isaiah, but it was empty. Mysterious. Wodston feared the poor Shek had been taken as a slave himself, but then he heard a strange muttering from outside.
Bounties, bribes, bail.
Isaiah, what are you doing here?
Mr. Wodston! Oh, Ochran's grace! I'd almost given up hope.
Isaiah, we would never forget you. We'll tell you all about it. Now put this jacket on and imagine you're a roll of dirty bed sheets.
I'm not really in the mood for anything like that, Mr. Wodston.
It's an escape plan. Trust me, we've been practicing.
The ever-surprising strength of Old Man Wodston bore Isaiah down the ramp and out the front door.
Ah, my lost laundry. Thanks, old man who I don't know,
Nuk said loudly outside. Seemed legit. To complete the plan, the crew took their Sheckley sheets outside the town in order to have all 5 of them walk into town and be noted as people who couldn't possibly have been in prison up until just now. They didn't even need to bother, really. It was late in the day, and as we already know, the guards' eyes are just drawn over their closed eyelids. Thus, after all the madness, the gang packed themselves into Wodston's cramped little shed in the corner of town.
Well, you've had a far more dramatic time of it than I,
Isaiah said after hearing a summary of the story. Sorry you missed it, man, but we're gonna get you some proper revenge now, Nuk said.
Oh, Prince Tashino, you really needn't. You've already been through so much for me.
Yeah, and check this out. Nuk opened his bag. 10,000 cats. Still just talking about the money, unfortunately, but that was still pretty good.
Ah, the phantom pennies.
Exactly, and starting tomorrow you're going to earn a few for yourself, adventuring instructor.
Wait, does that mean there's going to be another adventure?
Izumi asked, slumping down on a bedroll. Yes? What do you think the Tashino Credit Management Guild does?
Robs corpses?
And
Gets beaten up?
And
Goes on adventures?
goes on adventures, exactly. Only this time we're gonna be ready. We're gonna go pro,
Well, that's the right spirit for it at least.
Isaiah noted.
But please, don't do it for me this time.
Guess we can get revenge on something else, like...
Oh, History Girl. What did I do? No, we'll get revenge for past. Ah yes, bloody past. We'll steal some more of your history stuff. Gets us rich, right? Sure, that's why I'm trying to sleep on a straw mat in a dusty shed that stinks of the lesser Shek.
Isaiah don't smell.
Els noted, looking up from a sack of old beans that had his full attention over in the corner.
There are plenty of historical sites out there,
Isaiah said.
untouched for the most part.
If you guys are serious, then sure, let's do it,
Izumi said.
Perhaps there will be less interference from those crooked slavers,
Wodston reasoned.
Oh yes, we won't get any trouble from them.
Isaiah reassured him.
However, there are reasons people don't visit the old ruins.
Reasons that won't be able to stop us, Nuk proclaimed.
Ah yes, you are the enemy of reason, after all,
Izumi noted. Nuk resolved to prove himself with an actual adventure then. But now that he was a little more worldly, he knew that he needed to focus less on looking like a ninja, which he had of course achieved flawlessly, and more on being one. He needed to learn which end of a sword was the pointy one, and perhaps even more advanced martial arts secrets. That, in a roundabout way, was why he burst into the home of a local townswoman the next day.
You shinobi are less subtle than ever,
the woman noted. Nuk pointed at her. You'll never get a buyer like that.
What? Get out of my house!
Don't you mean my house? Nuk had 5 strings of cats, the coins again, dangling from his fingers. In a weird, poorly rehearsed fashion, he swung them up in front of him, and with his other hand he sliced the strings with his blade. The shrieking woman was subject to a bombardment of scattering bronze and silver. Once the racket of this economic explosion settled, Nuk announced that this was his home now. Once the woman realized just how much cash he had splurged all over the shop, She decided not to argue and head off with coins in hand. It was worth a prince's ransom, as we well know. This was how the Tashino Credit Management and Unannounced Product Recall Guild, and the Wodston Non-Consensual Private Healthcare Guild, and the Semi-Professional Association of Archaeological Grudge Settlers all got a brand new headquarters. The hillside townhouse was in a quiet, well-to-do area of the city, the sort of place where no one would suspect that a band of would-be criminal academics were scheming away. Okay, perhaps you would expect that, especially if you saw the new rooftop training space Wodston had set up. Mats had been laid out and sticks gathered so that the crew could get to grips with fighting. Slavers usually couldn't be bothered with stock that fought back. With Isaiah to show everyone the basics, they'd soon be much more road-ready than before. Downstairs, they set up an office for Izumi to collect her notes and work on her supposed body of research. Very cushy, actually, and it meant that any guards who poked their head around the door would see a somewhat respectable home to suit the somewhat respectable neighbourhood. The fact that most of the books in this office had lewd cover art and property of slaver Gav and the like scrawled inside them would go completely undiscovered. In the desert, a book's a book, but a rock is not always a rock. Finally, while all this work was going on, Wodston could carry out his noble pursuits. He pocketed hundreds, if not thousands, each time skimmers attacked the city, which is to say, he could scarcely get 5 minutes off. Well then, isn't this a productive scene? After many tribulations, it seems Nuk's determination to be as unnoble as possible was actually dragging his crew up from the gutter he had admittedly dragged them into just days prior, but history wouldn't remember that. Or anything, if Izumi kept her promise. But the truth was that she did start to keep a few notes on what was going on, out of mere curiosity. She'd have to flex her writing muscles well soon, for Nuk's next quest would have her seeing things she'd never seen in her entire life, and with very good reason. On the roof of the TCMU PRWNC PHG and SPAAGS HQ, a battle raged on.
Keep moving up! Don't let them come back into it!
Isaiah was insisting. Izumi shuffled forwards and kicked Nuk in the stomach. He reeled backwards, gasping for breath.
Oh, give over. I was holding back,
Izumi insisted.
Yeah, whatever. I don't need to hear your gloating. You're lucky I didn't go beast mode on you both. Both? Yeah. Think I wouldn't notice you attacking me 2-on-1? When'd your sister get here anyway? She's cute. Isaiah?
I think this is what he previously called the bad green. Don't worry about it. I think Wodston's supposed to be getting a fresh batch of his medication now.
In Heft's uptown bar, Wodston was awkwardly signalling the barman.
I believe you have something for me.
For you? Sorry. You're that doc, right?
Well, not for me exactly. For, you know.
For you downstairs? We don't do that.
For the prince. The prince.
Prince? Oh, you mean that guy?
The barman pointed to a hiver sitting at a nearby table. Hivers were curious folk. People usually called them bugmen, which gives you a rough impression of their appearance. Imagine an upright stick insect and you'll be even closer. They were the planet's dominant species before humans had shown their greasy mops around here, but the hivers of those days were far more primitive. After millennia of evolution alongside the sapients, the hivers had developed many traits to compete with the new arrivals: speech, academics, crafts, and in a few isolated cases, a thirst for adventure. This bar bug was an example of the latter. "Is there something you want, old flesh?" the hiver asked from behind the brow of his large hat.
Sorry, no, I said the prince.
"That's me," the hiver continued.
Oh, prince of what?
"What do you think? See a hive in here, old one?" I should explain the fellow's indignation. For hivers, living apart from a hive was extremely unusual, to put it lightly. In ordinary circumstances, hivers craved each other's close company and worked as a single body to better their communities. But rapid evolution had left a few quirks in their genome, and so these days more and more hivers felt no connection to their hive at all. They were thus banished if they didn't leave of their own accord. This inclination could strike anyone, from drone to exarch, from lackey to prince.
I was speaking of the Imperial Prince Nuk Tashino,
Wodston said.
Tashino, you are in the wrong city. He was exiled.
only from the palace.
What? That's not what I heard.
I was there as the order was given, friend.
Really? Who are you?
Wodston explained his connection to Nuk and the current activity of the various guilds that surrounded him. The hiver suddenly stood up.
Take me to him. I command it.
Actually, I don't think he would like that.
We are of equal rank and equal station.
I don't follow.
Exiled prince. Take me to him.
After further insistences, Wodston showed the hiver down the hill to the HQ. The hiver rushed up the stairs and found Nuk lying on the ground, with Isaiah and Azumi pondering what to do with him. Nuk shrieked, pointing at the guest.
The bad green! It's the bad green! It's here! It's alive!
Isaiah grabbed a sword and blocked the hiver's path.
Private residence, little man. Off you go now. Nonsense. I have diplomatic immunity.
Oh? Are you a wizard?
Wodston appeared from downstairs to explain the situation.
A hive prince, Azumi commented. That's fascinating. May I ask you a few questions?
No, slender one.
You'll want to talk. What if a beefy Shek asks you instead,
Is he of princely station?
Guess not. Mr. Wodston, why have you brought this prince here?
Wodston was getting an eyeful from Isaiah. I should note that he was the only one in the group who knew that Isaiah was indeed of princely station. They had decided to keep it secret to stop Nuk feeling insecure. They were good friends. Azumi dragged a semi-conscious Nuk away, and the Hive Prince declared that he would wait for Nuk to awake. The others shrugged and went back to their training, occasionally glancing at the perfectly still hiver doing a decent impression of a small tree in the corner. In the evening, Nuk awoke.
Wodston, that wasn't just bad green. It was fucking haunted, he moaned.
Your manservant isn't here. He is performing unsolicited surgery in a nearby gulch.
Fine, cool, weird. You fug, it's still haunted in here.
I am a prince, and you must associate with me.
Oh, bug man. I see it now. Sorry, man.
I understand that you feel the weakness of your flesh when you ingest hashish. Your choice to do it regardless is most amusing.
Yeah? Sounds like you're a lava minute yourself.
Associate with me.
Man, I'm not into that.
Declare your association. I require your association.
The hiver was shuffling closer to poor Nuk, cowering in bed.
Fug! Where is everyone? Who even are you?
I am your new associate. Your flappy ears will not be able to hear my name. I use the Greenland name Gustavsson, Prince Gustavsson. I am now associated to you, a prince also.
Cool. Is this like it? Did I get associated with?
Yes, associate.
Cool. Man, was my first time.
And it will not be the last. We must associate with more of princely station.
This is what it's like to be one of Wodston's patients. Ugh.
The long and short of it was that Prince Gustavsson was extremely happy to be associated with another prince, and was henceforth a fixture in the HQ. He didn't say or do much, and everyone gradually got used to it. It's like having a pot plant that moves around sometimes. Still, there was something to be said for having a hive prince around the house, for other lesser hivers had this automatic desire to serve him. One night, when Gustavsson accompanied Nuk to a bar, Nuk mentioned that he liked the sound of how hivers had drone workers who blindly followed orders. Gustavsson pointed at a lone hiver in the corner, snapped his fingers, and suddenly an even skinnier hiver named Julian was at the guild's disposal. Cooking, cleaning, light dusting, heavy lifting, this sprightly stickman was quite the asset. Julian was put in charge of looking after the guild's property in heft, while Nuk took everyone else out on the expedition he had been planning over the last week. This was the expedition to get revenge on the past, which was something to do with getting rich selling old Empire knickknacks from ancient ruins. Nuk bought a Garu to carry the loot. He named it Gary, since Azumi wasn't there to criticize him for it. If you've never heard of a garou, imagine a cross between a cow, a donkey and a dog. It was a fat, four-legged, big-mouthed hunk of a beast with enough strength to rip you apart if it wanted, but it didn't want because garou were totally chill. Isaiah happily volunteered to be in charge of the new pet. Gary was delighted, mistaking Isaiah for a garou himself on account of his pale, rough skin. With all these preparations made, the crew geared up for a long walk out to the places where most feared to tread. And given that people were literally mauled to death right outside Heft on the daily, these other places must have something really crazy going on. Or really cool, as Nuk imagined, or really interesting, as Azumi imagined. Els was imagining himself out drinking a garou to screaming applause and adulation. "Alright everyone, adventure time," Nuk declared. Isaiah cheered alone. "Please cheer," Nuk added, gaining a nearly audible murmur in response. One suspects the crew weren't entirely sure whether this was a good idea. It was Nuk's idea after all. Well, things were fine for at least 50 paces out the door of the HQ. There, Nuk's pungent scent smacked the guards out of their stupor, and he had to pay them $2,000 to not go searching through Nuk's hashish pouch. More of a satchel than a pouch, really. Now the trip had to be extra profitable. It was a long walk they had planned, down to the eastern coast and then south to the abandoned outlands known as Howler's Maze.
What's a howler?
Els asked.
It's the sound you make when you get killed there, I think,
Isaiah said.
Are we gonna get killed? Well, not all of us, I wouldn't expect.
What exactly is the thing that will kill us?
Izumi asked.
You can't believe talk, but they say giant crabs.
How about that? I don't believe the talk.
How giant? Nuk asked.
Don't really know. That's the point of an adventure, isn't it?
Totally. Let's do it, boys. Get me a giant crab for dinner. Nuk pointed out at the horizon, and the adventure was on. He was impatient to see the surely delicious menace that awaited them, and he was in luck, for he would have the pleasure of being unconscious for most of the journey. Why? Well, Nuk was again proudly wearing his noble robes, and that attracted the attention of the rebels.
Oppressor!
They screamed as they charged at the group.
I have a name, you know,
Nuk retorted, drawing his blade. After a good week of practice, the whole crew knew a thing or two about fighting, which was about the same number of things the scraggly rebels knew as well. Being fresh from the city gave our heroes the edge though, and slowly the battle turned in their favour. Nuk wasn't happy though. He saw Gustafsson just standing there, watching the mass melee with a smile on his face.
Oi, Bad Green, come on, fight them,
Nuk insisted.
That is not necessary. Come, Prince, let us watch the soldiers perform their dance.
Fucking... You're not even the prince of anything. Look, swap places with me. You fight my one, and I'll... Ah!
Unfortunately, Nuk's one clubbed him across the head. When he woke up, it was night time, and all around him were tall pillars of rock. They tore the wind this way and that, and drove it through little gaps at high speeds. This made a certain sound, and hence we learned the real reason the place was called Howler's Maze. Oh, but Isaiah's reason wasn't exactly wrong either.
Wodston! The bird,
Nuk mumbled.
The Bad Green apologizes for the inconvenience,
Gustafsson said.
Where are we?
Isaiah says this is the edge of Howler's Maze,
Wodston said. The doctor was sat beside Nuk inspecting the bandage around his head.
Any giant crabs?
I'm afraid not, my prince.
What time is it?
Around 3, my prince.
I wanna...
What is it, my prince?
Giant crab. For breakfast.
I really think...
Giant crab for breakfast. Come on.
Nuk seems to have become fully energized and was up on his feet, moving out with a swaying gait towards the even howlier highlands just barely visible to the east. They crossed a series of rocky paths between large pools of seawater. Rock pools. The sort of place you might expect to see...
Ah! Giant crab!
Izumi shouted. A huge, orange, armoured scuttler emerged from the dark water as they passed by its hiding spot.
Oh, it's not even that big,
Isaiah said, drawing his sword and eyeing up the metre-long claws on the 2-metre-long arms of the 3-metre-wide crustacean all atop those 4-metre legs.
Have you ever seen a normal-sized crab, my man?
Nuk asked, backing away.
My prince, shall we?
Wodston asked.
Yes, leg it! Leave the fucking giant crab! I want a smaller one!
With this, the crew was on the move once again. Luckily, one of the promised ancient ruins was just up the hill beyond the pools, and by the time they reached it and looked back, the curious crab had returned to its important business in the sea.
So that's a giant crab,
Nuk huffed as they caught their breath.
And this is from the Second Empire,
Izumi noted, looking over the collapsed dome of the structure.
Yeah, so's my old house. And I would be delighted to analyse that also if you weren't so obnoxious that your own family threw you out here among the bloody giant crabs.
I thought you'd be happier.
Just forget it.
Miss Izumi,
Wodston asked.
Could it be that the giant crabs have unnerved you?
What the fuck do you think?
I just want you to know that I am here for you.
Whatever. Technically I'm here for you, remember?
This slight from a discontented worker was taken in the most romantic way possible by the old doctor, as usual. Izumi was cheered up by the coming of sunrise, and with the discovery that the building they were in was part of a large settlement, with many other structures still intact. The crew poked around in a few of these large cylindrical shells, but they were empty. Someone had beaten them to it.
I thought this place was untouched,
Nuk complained to Isaiah.
Perhaps the crabs were smaller in the past,
Isaiah offered.
The past? Oh, don't talk to me about the past.
Shall I get revenge on the past for you, master?
Els offered.
Can't, can we? Everything's already been revenged to bits.
What about that one?
Els pointed at a door they hadn't tried yet.
Be my guest, Charlie, my good man.
Let's take a seat, everyone.
Guess we'll eat the Okran forsaken skimmer steaks for breakfast.
A few minutes later, Els reported back.
Them crabs really were smaller before. Some of them still are as well.
I thought as much. Isaiah nodded to himself.
Hang on. What's that sound?
Behind Els was a carpet of movement, approaching fast. What do you know? It was a bunch of less giant crabs.
Less giant crabs!
Izumi shouted. The gang rushed out and fled the scene, running up a nearby ridge and across the barely visible outline of an ancient roadway. The less giant crabs continued to wander the ruins, dreaming of one day becoming less giant crabs. From their new retreat point, the crew were overlooking a large ruined settlement. And a large crab. More than a giant crab, it was
a giant fucking crab.
Nuk breathed, pointing down at the patrolling, building-sized monster.
It's a mega crab,
Izumi said.
That's a sweet name, mega crab.
Man, mega crab for lunch? Wodston talked Nuk down, and in the meantime, Izumi analysed what she could of the settlement.
That building there, the close one, it's got that symbol on the side, like the Traders Guild.
Traders Guild? Out here?
Puzzled Isaiah.
No, the symbol is from the old empire. It's a state library.
Oh, funny place for one.
It's the... Sorry, never mind. Prince Tashino, the treasure is in there.
The lost treasure of the ancients, guarded by the king of all crabs, the mega crab, Nuk mused. Fucking cool. I'll get it.
Do not harm the crustacean,
Gustafsson insisted before Nuk left.
Man, I'm not gonna be fighting a fucking 10-meter tall mega crab.
Good. The mega crab is suitable for association.
No, okay, just no. Mega crab don't want to be your friend. I guarantee it.
You feel threatened by its dominance.
What? I feel like you're insane. Just do your tree thing for a bit, okay? I'm going in.
Nuk, now something slightly more than an amateur ninja, snuck down to the library and eyed the mega crab as it wandered about town. When the time was right, he started jabbing at the lock on the library door. The door had been closed for 3,000 years, so suffice to say it was a tad stiff. The others, watching from the ridge above town, saw Nuk constantly giving them the thumbs up as he worked, hour after hour. The mega crab crept about, but was unable to hear Nuk swearing under his breath, or even the point when Nuk started hammering his sword straight into the locking gears. Eventually though, there was a slight hiss, and a machine pulled the doors open. Bingo. That is the first word Nuk saw on a shelf from the door. How to Win at Bingo, the book was titled. Ancient treasure of the rarest form. Nuk searched the place and signalled for Wodston and Els to bring some bags down for haulage. Azumi was quite right about it being a library, but most of the stuff inside was either rotten or was just random bits of old fiction with few or even no big-eyed illustrations, practically worthless. The only valuable pieces were some old science books, which contained handy info on things like how that hydraulic door Nuk had broken actually worked. And there were maps to other ancient towns across the world, which are valuable to an adventurer at least.
What did you get?
Izumi asked excitedly. Stuff. Here's the best one. Got a few pictures. Space Marine Codex, it says, right? Nuk said.
Space Marine. The sky and the sea. Sounds like it could be philosophy.
Nuk decided to let Azumi remain excited about that. The nearby ancient road led further uphill, and the coast was relatively clear of crabs of any proportion, so they hiked on a little further. Eventually they came to the very top of the barren hill, just as the sun was setting. From the heights they could see a few other ancient settlements dotted along the coast nearby. And, thanks to the dim twilight, it didn't even look like they were crawling with giant crabs. This adventuring thing wasn't that bad, was it? As long as the mega crabs didn't see you, the world was your old, dusty oyster. The view from that hill, high above the Howler's Maze, was something very few people in the world had ever seen. Even fewer had seen the rare copy of The Rusty Agronian Spade, a book written during the time when machine intelligence reigned supreme over the world. As Isaiah had said, this was the life. Would all of Nuk's trips be this nice? Absolutely, positively not. In the darkness of early morning, on the eastern coast of an abandoned peninsula, Nuk Tashino edged forwards towards the door of an ancient structure. He flipped the switch beside it, and with a whoosh, the darkness within was revealed. Nuk instinctively jumped back, but no danger emerged. "No crabs. Come on then," he reported over his shoulder. The gang marched up, hoping to get some rest in under this 3,000-year-old roof. But within moments, Nuk was barreling back through them, calling out the watchword, "Crabs! Crabs! Crabs!" Yes, this was crab country, and out-of-towners weren't welcome. The mystery of just who had locked a swarm of crabs in there was greater than that of the ruins' origins by a long shot. There were two possible explanations. Either some crab-wrangling hero had sealed the evil away, or the crabs had learned to open and close doors. Azumi favoured the latter hypothesis, for it fit well with the academic principle of Okran's razor. All things being equal, the theory that increases your probability of death the most is closest to the truth. Battered by wind and acid rain, and without even an exoskeleton to call home, the team were having a rather unsavoury night. Only by the chance discovery of another sealed ancient library, and by the vulgar-tongued charms of locksmith Nuk, did they find shelter, not to mention a load more books for Gary to lug about. "I don't get it," Nuk said in the morning, shaking his head. "It says here that ninjas are from Japan. As in the fantasy world in the novels, right?"
You mean to say they emerged from the ancient texts? Wait. Could this be the power of the skeleton wizard your father sent us after?
Isaiah reasoned. Man, if stuff in the ancient texts becomes real, we're in big trouble. There was this guy who made your clothes just like melt away. Well, not for guys, actually. Sorry, history girl.
Yeah, I think it'll be fine. And just so you know, those books are talking about Earth.
Earth? Can you read? It's pronounced Japan.
Didn't they educate you in the palace, oh prince?
Yeah, I've read all the ancient texts back to fucking front and they suck. But I remember enough to know it's pronounced Japan. Or was it Nippon?
Ever wondered what that thing in the sky is?
I know,
Els butted in.
The big one is Akron, and the little one is Nurko, and the big one is the good one.
Charlie boy knows it. See, history girl, knowing stuff isn't really a special skill, so save the lectures, Nuk said. Sure. Let's stick with the skeleton wizard theory then, shall we? Izumi huffed.
It is the more reasonable explanation, Isaiah nodded. Have you ever heard of Okran's razor?
That morning, the crew began the march back home. They walked up to the northern coast of Howler's Maze and along the bumpy beaches that snaked west beneath the shadows of blackened skyscraper fragments. In one such shadow, a giant crab was striding about as if it was guarding the ancient secrets of the once great tower. Or that is how Nuk put it to Izumi when he advocated for fighting the creature. We literally can't go back without defeating one giant crab. It's like, I don't know, going to Shobutai without getting enslaved. It's just what you do, right? He argued.
Triumph over lesser beings is a mark of status,
Gustafsson said.
Please proceed to slay the creature. I will observe your potential carefully.
Hear that? Bad Green's observing our fucking potential. Can't back out now, can we?
My prince, have you thought this through?
Wodston asked, but Nuk was already rushing out to battle. Els followed his master, and Isaiah lifted up his sword and roared out before diving in too. The crab had seen the bunch and was already scuttling over to cut them down to size. Its snippy crab jabs were hard to follow. In the ensuing brawl, Els was knocked unconscious, and Isaiah broke a leg and an arm. But he was laughing almost manically as the crab slumped down into the sand and snip-snapped no more.
I knew it,
Isaiah said.
Who's the giant crab now?
So, how'd we look? Nuk asked Gustafsson.
You could not defeat the mega crab. You are unskilled, was the answer.
Not skilled? Nuk shot back, but he said nothing else as blood ran down his forehead and got into his eyes, to say nothing of the resulting tumble across the dormant mass of an aptly named Bloody Els. Once the combatants were patched and picked up, the party carried on their way. They saw signs of civilization earlier than expected. On the edge of Howler's Maze, gangs of vagabonds, rebels, and manhunters were brawling up and down the bluffs. A few tried to stop our heroes from passing, but they soon backed away when Nuk pulled a giant severed crab claw from the baggage and announced himself as the Crab Slayer champion. He charged out, wielding the huge claw in both hands, and while he was too weak to actually swing it, the mere sight cleared the group a path through the melee. By 2 in the morning, the claw was hanging on the wall of the guild HQ. Revenge, Nuk declared with a closed fist as he stood before the trophy.
Revenge!
Isaiah cheered.
I'm glad you feel things are settled, my prince,
Wodston said.
Yep, that'll teach those crabs to... What was the revenge for again?
Izumi asked.
You know.
The audacity of them, Nuk said.
Audacity? Big word. Maybe you are a little educated, mighty prince.
Oh, don't be like that. Look, we stole loads of the past, didn't we? Can't you just be happy?
I am perfectly happy.
What?
I mean, not literally. Or even...
Who wants crab for dinner?
Isaiah suddenly asked, and after much debate about how such a rare delicacy should be cooked, they enjoyed a dinner worthy of a prince. Or 3. You can taste the audacity, Nuk remarked.
I hope this is safe to eat,
Wodston said.
Your father would not forgive me if you fell ill.
I'm as healthy as a garu.
With the face to match,
Izumi quipped. Yeah, who's the ninja of comedy now? Face to match, Nuk said, although it was hard to hear over the laughter filling the room. You take a crab jab to the stomach, you learn a life lesson, and it's the same with words. Whether Nuk learnt anything in particular in either case remains in contention. A few days later, Nuk gathered the crew again to discuss the next big thing in credit management. The Deadlands, he announced, hitting his stick against the map the group was sitting around. A land of pure opportunity. Isaiah looks like he was about to say something, but Nuk carried on strong. My wonderful assistant here, well, my agreeable Look, history girl here compared one of the maps I discovered.
Stole,
Izumi corrected him. My useless, greasy, slimy, unbearable dreg of an assistant.
I didn't do nothing to them maps,
Els added.
Oh, my narco, I don't even. I'm on such a straight edge here. Just everyone shut up.
How about this? I, on my own, with no credit due to anyone else, have discovered the location of an ancient, intact workshop. And that location is the Deadlands. So, we're going to the fucking Deadlands to discover, steal, whatever, some stuff, and then, I don't know, we'll have some stuff. Might get us a table and chairs or whatever. Any questions? There were quite a few questions, but the answer to most of them was no comment.
When they say Deadlands, am I to take it that the name is entirely inappropriate?
Wodston asked. Nuk shrugged, but Isaiah had the lowdown.
Oh, it's a very fitting name. Life is almost impossible there. Acid rain, toxic gas, the most foul weather, and certain rumors say there are mechanical soldiers of the Second Empire still prowling the Ashen Hills.
No giant crabs, though? Izumi asked.
I suppose not. Well, either they won't be there at all, or they'll be even more giant. That's how it tends to go in my experience.
You definitely want to go to such a place, my prince?
Wodston asked Nuk. I'll tell you once we're there, was the reply. A few days' halt were negotiated for preparations. Izumi continued writing notes on the ancient books they had collected before they were to be sold off, and Isaiah was tasked with finding, as Nuk put it, decoys. This translated into him hiring a pair of cheap mercenaries named Bobby and Claw. Gustafsson sniffed at them when they arrived in the HQ, and didn't look especially impressed. Which one's which? Nuk asked.
Bobby, Claw,
Isaiah said, pointing at each in turn. Shek or Pox?
Shek.
Cool, but they better be really weird. Got a thing going with my Shek collection.
Oh, they are most unusual. They've been on the run from agents of the Shek Kingdom for years. They even know your friends in the Shinobi Tower.
And do they say anything for themselves?
No, not at all.
Bobby, or was it Claw, held up a small chalk sign with an apology written on it. Nuk came forwards and shook their hands enthusiastically. Weird as fuck and bloody silent. Yes, Isaiah, my man. And they don't even stink. They smell like me.
They don't smell like you,
Gustafsson corrected him from the corner. Whatever. So, either of you ever killed a giant crab? Another couple of days went by, and then in the dawn hours the guild gathered in the street outside the HQ, geared up and with their 2 new foot soldiers ready with huge swords to defend their princely master. Although, I'll let you in on a little secret. They weren't there to defend the prince that Nuk thought they were. Nuk had finally left his noble robes at home and wore loose-fitting grey and black wraps all the way up to his eyes. Now the rebels surely wouldn't give him any trouble, as he looked just like one of them. There couldn't possibly be any trouble on the horizon for looking like a rebel though, could there? It wasn't that bad really. It was at least 2 or 3 horizons over at the closest. The Deadlands awaited, but there were other various regions they would have to cross to reach it, which were no less dead themselves. First was the uneventful walk out of the desert and into the Heng Highlands, passing by the other end of the basin that Trader's Edge overlooked to its west. Then they passed through the corpse of a creek between 2 near vertical mountains and out into another stretch of yellow desert. This was the Skim Sands. With any luck, it was just a name. Not a chance.
Fucking run, you morons!
Nuk shouted when Bobby and Claw drew swords to face a wave of skimmers flying across the sand. The crew fled over a ridge and saw sanctuary not so far away. There was a huge metallic tower atop a mesa, marking the end of a scorched mountain range that rose up towards the northwest. They raced the skimmer horde towards this looming mushroom-shaped castle. The skimmers, strangely, seemed unwilling to get close to it and returned to the desert. What a relief. Even better, around the base of the mesa there were United Cities troops, samurai, patrolling about.
Where is this? We've got men here, Nuk puzzled.
I've never heard of such an outpost, my prince. Although,
Wodston said. Although what?
There was always a place that people mentioned in the palace, now and again. The vault.
Vault? Like money vault? Wait, is Dad holding off on me? Is my inheritance in that fug-off citadel so I can't fucking... That man is a monster!
Before anything else could be said, Nuk ran to the fortified checkpoint on the mesa's shallower side. The guards closed ranks and barked at him from a distance.
Step any closer and lose your life, ninja scum.
What? I'm not a ninja. Well, I am a ninja, but I'm the prince.
We could kill you for just saying that, you dreg. Get lost.
No, you get out of my way. I need to inspect your garrison and rest. Official Empire business. Nuk had been walking closer as he spoke, and perhaps the only reason he hadn't been run through with spears was that tasty audacity of his. The guards couldn't believe a real ninja would try such a brazen, obvious trick, so they feared some deeper, invisible trick was afoot. Was this guy trying to get attacked as part of his plan? Pondering this made them slow to react when Nuk suddenly bolted forwards and ran past them. The alarm was sounded as Nuk dashed up the ramp to the top of the mesa, carved from the rock face by slaves of centuries past. At the top he entered the huge ancient warehouse and found a dozen more samurai eyebrows rise in surprise, and then a half-dozen blades unsheathed.
I'm the prince, where's my inheritance?
Nuk shouted, but his dashing about the place didn't seem all that legitimate, you must admit. Strangely, there was no gold or silver to be seen. Nuk was about to ask after it again, but with 20 trained samurai now bearing down on him from all directions, he decided he'd have to take it up with head office sometime instead. The rest of the group were standing awkwardly outside, listening to the shouting and ringing of bells from the tower above them.
They cannot tell he is of princely station. These soldiers are not suitable for use,
Gustafsson commented.
Sure, so should we really be standing here too? Pretty sure they're gonna kill us in a minute,
Izumi said.
Wait, we can't leave without the prince,
Wodston insisted.
He's got to be dead by... Oh, Ockran's blood.
Nuk was spotted sprinting down the ramp at full pelt, with a platoon of samurai clattering after him.
We could always start running now, get warmed up,
Isaiah suggested. It was a fine idea. Nuk blasted past the lower checkpoint and followed his crew down to the southern strip of the skim sands. This stretch of desert was host to a huge beast skeleton, large enough to rival the nearby mountains. It was the most amazing thing the crew had ever glanced at while crossbow bolts kicked up sand around them and heavy boots stomped without relent on their tails. In front of them, the desert petered out and the ground rose up to a char-soiled labyrinth of valleys known as the Black Desert. The samurai no longer pursued them, but as they all drew in deep breaths to recover, they couldn't help but notice how their throats cloyed and their chests convulsed.
Ah, what is this?
Izumi said.
This land is soiled,
Isaiah told her.
Els, can you breathe?
No, master.
Must be really soiled then.
We must go back, my prince,
Wodston said, but Nuk was already pointing forwards.
The Deadlands are over those hills. We can make it. Couldn't help but notice that the only difference between the Deadlands and the non-Deadlands is that they kill you in a different way,
Izumi said.
Yes, that's a fair way of putting it. Such is the stage of any adventure,
Isaiah said, setting off behind Nuk to jog towards the aforementioned coal-coloured hill, clouded in a dark fog and decorated with the occasional flash of light and a sound like thunder. This new sanctuary was probably going to be just as good as the last one. They reached the top of the hill, and before them were the sprawling lowlands of death, apparently. Couldn't see a thing on account of it being a smoggy new moon midnight in the land of darkness.
Wodston, map,
Nuk called. The doctor obeyed.
We're between the Deadlands here and the Black Desert here,
he reported. Cool.
Doesn't sound that cool,
Izumi commented.
No, it's cool because it means the ruin is like right there. Where? There!
Nuk was pointing into the void. That is to say, he wasn't pointing at anything.
So, we're just gonna run off into the fog, or fumes, or whatever the faggle that is?
Yes, and I feel like you need to tone it down on the language. Before Izumi could tone it up on the language, a huge bolt of lightning flashed nearby, and the ground exploded up, showering the crew with hot, toxic dirt.
We need to get off the high ground,
Isaiah said.
It's a race to the bottom,
Nuk announced as he began his speedy advance. Everyone followed him down the steep slope ahead of them. Further flashes of lightning revealed some kind of lake at the bottom, overlooked by looming shadows of ancient silos, towers and pipes. A few minutes later, a burning rain began to fall. All the more reason to follow Nuk as he ranged around the lakeside towards a complete silhouette of an ancient workshop.
It hurts a bit, Master. Can we go inside?
Els asked.
Not yet, just gotta check something. Checking for crabs?
Izumi asked.
Just for you, honey.
The door to the workshop was open, but there was no light coming from inside. Nuk quickly ran up, even more quickly gave up on trying to spy through the windows on account of the driving sheets of acid falling down on him, and went inside. As he crossed the threshold, the light suddenly switched on, and there was movement all around him. Before he could reach for his sword, he was surrounded by skeletons. And yes, now is finally the time to clarify that to our heroes, the word skeleton referred to the artificial folk of the old empire. These robots had been workers in the ancient human civilization, although the role had also been reversed for a while. Luckily for Nuk, the skeletons huddled in this lonely workshop were of the classic subservient variety.
Master! Protect the Master! Welcome, Master!
They chirped here and there, although they would say nothing else.
What? Who are you?
Nuk asked.
Error!
Was the simple reply. Any other question made equal progress. When Nuk tried to move, the skeletons clustered around him like a screen of bodyguards. Nuk called everyone else in.
Having trouble, Prince Tashino?
Isaiah asked. No, not at all. I think I might have accidentally become the leader of a robot army.
Is that so? I mean, you've said as much before, but unless it's the toxic gases playing with my mind, I think this is more than bad green. Mr. Wodston?
I do believe these robots are quite real, although the toxicity of the air is a concern.
Yeah, but there are seriously like 30 skeletons in here,
Izumi noted, not willing to go very close to any of them.
Fug, yeah. I'm the Lord of Skeletons,
Nuk announced. It was surprisingly hard to argue against it. He had shelter for the night and a new robot army to play with. This adventuring business was reaching a whole new level, and as he would learn the next morning, that wasn't the only secret hidden in the treacherous Deadlands, and certainly not the biggest one.
You see that?
Nuk asked, peering out of the workshop window.
Hard to say that I do,
Isaiah replied.
Wait for the next flash.
It didn't take long before lightning streaked across the besmirched skies of the Deadlands and revealed on the horizon the outline of something.
I saw it, you're right,
Isaiah exclaimed.
There's something huge, mysterious, and most likely dangerous out there. That's the good stuff.
More like the good stuff will be inside. If this little shack gave me a skeleton army, what's going to happen when we go to that massive factory or whatever?
My prince, what if that place is guarded?
Wodston asked in vain. Literal ninja? Literal skeleton army? I think I'll be fine, my man. And that's like history out there. History goes in, right?
Well, it's history, alright,
Izumi said from the opposite side of the room to the skeletons. There you go, she agreed with everything I said, and Charlie loves it here, don't you?
It's dark. I can do whatever I want here.
Els grinned. And he made it weird. But that's fine, that was accounted for. Bad green. You want to keep going? Not gonna melt or whatever? Idiot human, Gustafsson shot back. I am not afraid of the dark, and I do not agree that the rain burns. Gustafsson had the advantage of being a race native to this planet, long accustomed to its toxic precipitations. He and Gary both considered the nearby lakes of acid to be nice quiet spots for a swim. Or they would be quiet if there wasn't a perpetual thunderstorm overhead and pesky tourists from a big city guild here on a team-building excursion. And you guys, you all want to go for a little adventure, don't you?
Error!
The robots chimed. So we're all agreed. Come on then. The group filed out into the continuing drizzle of acid and started making their way south towards whatever the large shape Nuk had spotted on a distant hill was. As they rounded another small lake, the skeletons became agitated.
Danger! Danger! Protect the Master!
They were saying. What's all this about? Nuk asked.
Oh, for fug's sake! Giant crabs!
Azumi shouted. In the darkness ahead of them there was indeed something big crawling around on 4 legs with 2 arms extended forwards.
Hostile, hostile, hostile.
The skeletons agreed, rushing off towards it.
There really were giant crabs. But something's different,
Isaiah said. As they followed the charging skeletons, they saw that this was a very special kind of crab indeed.
There's no need to worry, Miss Azumi,
Isaiah said.
That's no giant crab. It's a giant robot spider. Ancient soldiers of sorts.
Firstly, spiders have 8 legs. That is a giant robot crab,
Izumi insisted. Not going to be anything soon. Look at my minions going wild on it, Nuk pointed out. Indeed, his legion of skeletons had swarmed the huge machine and were wailing on it with metal rods or their steely fists. The ancient crab spider soldier was swinging and stabbing at them with its rigid arms, but it was overwhelmed, and soon enough it appeared to lose power.
Threat neutralized. Master protected.
A skeleton proudly claimed. Nuk rushed over to congratulate them. Incredible men! You'll make fine samurai for my honor guard.
My prince! Behind you!
Wodston shouted. Behind the prince, the crab spider jerked back to life, its engine whirring and its legs digging into the ground.
Fug!
Nuk shouted. Thinking quickly, he jumped towards the thing and ripped away a warm metal sphere that was hanging on frayed wires from its underbelly. With that, the crab spider was vanquished for good. With a mechanical squeak, it locked itself in position forever.
Nuk! What did you do, Prince Tashino?
Izumi asked as she appeared at Nuk's side. Went for the round thing hanging underneath. Works on more than just spider robots, you know.
Okrin's faith, that's its core.
Obviously.
It's like its brain.
Ah, right. Gruesome.
It nearly killed you.
Yeah? You should see what I did to it.
Just give me the core, please.
Please, that's more like it.
Guys, what about those ones?
Els asked. He was gesturing towards the half-dozen more crab spider soldiers that were actually all around them upon closer inspection.
They're just waiting. Perhaps we can get the drop on them,
Isaiah suggested. Hang on. Bots, what's the deal with those other ones?
Error.
Ah, right. It's fine, guys. They're all glitched out.
Prince Tashino,
Izumi began, but she had to eat her words when Nuk ran up to another soldier, kicked it in the leg, and returned to tell the rather boring tale.
Looks like there are more of them ahead. Perhaps they used to guard the secrets of the Deadlands. We're in luck, it seems,
Isaiah said. Sure, but you saw how that went down. When you have a skeleton army, you don't need luck, Nuk quipped, taking the lead to continue the burning hot, soaking wet adventure south. They passed more and more dormant crab spiders as they rounded lakes flanked by the remains of ancient cities. It was all no worse for wear now that it was being nuked for a second time. They reached a small hill, atop which was the series of shapes they had seen from the workshop. Up close it was clear that it was some kind of ancient settlement, from the post-nuking era, but still thousands of years old. What's more, it flashed as bright as the lightning whenever thunder roared. No rust. Smoke was rising from chimneys. Someone was living in this hellhole. Before any plan of action could be made though, Nuk's skeletons buzzed to life.
Protect the master.
They chanted, sprinting forwards and up the hill into the town. Damn it. Looks like we'll have to fight for some bloody shelter. Come on, auxiliaries, to battle!
To battle!
Isaiah called, prompting growls from Bobby and Claw, who followed him up the hill. However, atop the hill, the lines of battle were not so clearly drawn. In the dull light, they could see skeletons fighting all over the town, fighting each other. After Nuk and company halted in confusion, one skeleton ran over to them. It wasn't one of Nuk's. It was clean, heavily armed, and more clearly spoken. Travelers, stay back. The broken ones are attacking. Please remain here for your own safety, it said. Oh man, they're the broken ones, huh? I hate those guys, Nuk said, nodding to his friends to play along. Will you be okay? They're pretty, elite warriors. There is nothing to fear. They are old models, still carrying the slave virus. They are obsolete.
Yeah, totally. You don't want to, just turn them off and leave them down there, do you?
They must be destroyed and recycled. Please proceed to the human hostel once the road is safe. Goodbye, travelers.
With that, the skeleton returned to the clanking melee nearby. Fug. My boys are getting decommissioned, Nuk lamented.
They were worthy soldiers. The crimes of these machine rebels cannot be forgiven.
I am sorry for your loss, Prince Tashino, Gustafsson said. I would say a few words for our fallen comrades, but it's fucking bucketing acid rain, so let's hit the pub, Nuk said. Everyone quickly agreed, and they ran past the slaughter of the broken ones and up the main road.
I just wanted to protect,
one said as its lights went out forever. At the other end of town was this so-called hostel. To the delight of all, it was actually some kind of bar. Tables and chairs were laid out around the hall, and food fit for biological life was being served. There were a couple of hivers sitting around, but the patrons were mostly skeletons, as was the barman who greeted them.
Travelers, we have some human feed available for purchase. Please take a seat.
Sure. First though, I'm not saying we're lost or anything, but where are we? Nuk asked.
This is Black Desert City.
But it's not in the Black Desert.
Yes, it is.
It's not. The Black Desert has, daylight and stuff. This is the Deadlands.
The previous human who came here called this area the Black Desert.
Yeah? When was that?
1,514 years ago.
Oh, right. Fine, maybe they called it Black Desert then, but it's Deadlands now.
We cannot change the name.
Why not?
We already constructed a sign.
Ah, fair enough. So this is like Skeleton City and stuff?
This is a refuge for all free skeletons. The world leaves us alone here, except for travelers from time to time.
Time to time indeed. So I guess that means it's not... there isn't anything I can... Do you have any items of historical value that might be more suited to study in the outside world?
If you take anything from Black Desert City, you will be hunted and destroyed.
Destroyed, huh? Nuk suddenly wondered just where this meat the bar served came from in a realm so devoid of life. Such thoughts convinced him to pay the fees for beds and retire the party upstairs. The human accommodation was little more than a bunkhouse on the second floor, but this was a joyous break from sleeping in besieged ancient ruins. While the party rested and tried to dry/deacidify their clothes, Nuk wandered over to a small lounge adjoining the bunkhouse. A few skeletons were sat at wooden benches with mugs of something viscous. They were perfectly still, and all but one ignored Nuk enter. The one that didn't had a brilliant red face painted over its dark skeleton faceplate. It even beckoned for Nuk to come sit down.
Outsider, you must be a curious one to come all the way to Black Desert City,
it said. Yeah, curious, that's one way of putting it. You look kinda different. You got the inside track on this place?
Wait, you gotta give me $2,000 to reactivate me first.
But you're already talking.
This is backup power or something. I'm coin operated, Mungo. I need 2 fat cats or I can't access the secrets in my memory chip and stuff.
They just leave you here. That's unbelievable.
I agree. Now give me 2 stacks and I'll tell you the legends from round these parts.
Alright, fine. You got a coin slot or something?
Just put it in my bucket here. My CPU will smell the money and come running.
Of course. Nuk handed over the requested amount, and the skeleton waved about dramatically.
I am restored to life,
it claimed.
Finally I can tell you everything. The name's Red Rick. You wanna know why they call me Red Rick?
Something to do with blood, right? You're a killer.
Oh no, my circuits. It's the money bucket. It's too empty. Another 2 stacks should unlock the hidden truth. Come on, man. I want to hear it as much as you.
Nuk was convinced and became yet poorer.
I see it now. It was over 2,000 years ago.
Oh yeah, there it is, clear as day.
What?
Some guy painted my face red. Started calling me Red Rick. Still red today.
And?
That's the story.
That's the fucking story?
Yep. Now what else you want to hear?
Listen, Ricky, I know your game. You're a grifter. I need to make some cash off this stopover, and you're gonna show me where the good stuff is.
My good stuff sensor is offline. I'll need 10 grand to cover the repairs. How about you fix me up, and I'll come with you wherever. Give you that inside track on all kinds of stuff from back in my day.
Skeletons, by the way, were functionally immortal. The skeletons in this building had been alive since long before the end of Old Society, but their limited memory capacity meant they didn't have any data left about those days. Nuk wasn't really up to speed on this latter point, and was happy to pay through the nose to get Red Rick as his personal skeleton revenge appraiser. Rick gave Nuk a tip about a huge facility on the edge of town, and took him to check it out. Regrettably, it had no treasure to speak of, and was merely a huge ancient factory that once created the Goliath battle machines that people like Azumi considered to be the reason the world had ended up how it was. A piece of history worthy of taking revenge on, you could say, but Nuk left empty-handed. After a long stint resting in the skeleton bar, everyone was less miserable than before, but generally were eager to leave the Deadlands. Their new escort Rick had a hot tip about an unlooted workshop to the northwest, so after introductions were made, and Gustafsson was done sniffing, they set off at quick march through the continuing rain and into an ancient industrial wasteland known as the Iron Valleys. Metal bridges set astride said valleys, and below were old ruins, ranging from barely visible to pristine. Rick's good stuff sensor was getting a strong reading from one particular building, an untouched armory. Why was it untouched, you ask? "Crab spider robot!" Azumi called. The machine rushed out of the armory doors and bashed Nuk, Azumi and Gustafsson to the ground. The others following behind drew their weapons, but swinging a sword against a foe with an iron body doesn't achieve all that much, as you might imagine. Wodston went to get Nuk back up on his feet, while the Sheks, Rick and Gary chipped away at whatever wires, tubes and holes they could find. The crab spider angrily thrashed about and no one came away uninjured, but at last it faltered and Nuk hobbled over to show everyone the secret undercarriage dismemberment technique. "Bloody ancient shits! Why did they leave all their junk around like this?" Nuk complained. "No offense, Red."
Offense taken, but I'm a reasonable kind of guy, so I'll still give you the codes to the door on that armory.
Inside said armory, the crew could rest and loot to their heart's content, although the acid rain outside was leaking through the roof and had pooled slightly on the ground, so their hearts weren't very content, as it turns out. After clearing the place of useful swords and gear, they used the last hours of daylight to cross the rest of the Iron Valleys and camp out on the edge of the skim sands for the night. Rick, like all skeletons, never slept, so he kept watch, and chose not to experience the time that passed, so that to him it was morning almost at once. Back in the familiar, sticky, life-draining embrace of a good old-fashioned brown desert, the crew plotted a route home. They chose to avoid going near that vault place again, but that meant they had to use a pass through a mountain chain known as the Spine. There was a proper road and everything, but that meant there were bandits. A few such highwaymen accosted the party, but Rick pushed to the front of the group to challenge them.
You ain't no coin-operated biologicals, fellas. Get out of here before I send y'all back to your mamas in tears,
he said.
Fucking Skelly boy's got a mouth on it. Alright, just for that, I'm doubling the toll,
the bandit retorted. Rick's head swiveled back and nodded to the rest of the crew, who were resting their hands on weapons already.
Wrong answer, bandito. I got news for you, son. My name is Red Rick, and you gon' get the stick.
Rick drew a hefty metal bar from a plate on his back, and as promised, didn't let the bandits leave without a few tears. Being made of metal and moving with instantaneous reaction speed really lets you have your way with the puny biologicals, equally respectable life forms.
Rick, you mad machine! You're a damn beast!
Nuk exclaimed once the beating was over.
What can I say, kid? I might be a grifter, sure, but you get what you pay for.
Rick, you're the best!
Izumi said. She ran up and looked like she was about to hug the skeleton, but then refrained.
Can I ask, what era are you from, by the way?
What era? You asking me how old I am? Don't you worry. I'm not too old to spend time with a flower like you, madame.
Oh, Rick.
Okay, she's a history girl, alright. She just asked because she's obsessed with eras and stuff, Nuk interjected.
Quite right,
Wodston was quick to add.
Let's get moving before the thugs return. Rick can lead the way, and we'll all keep back for safety.
And so they did, and as luck would have it, they crossed the rest of the skim sands in peace, making it to the slightly less skimmy sands around the town of Stoat, the walls and troops of which finally offered them the protection of civilization. Yes, the town was surrounded by dead bodies, and fights were going on left and right, but that's all very nostalgic after days on lonely roads, I assure you. After a little R&R, some good food, and a lot of well-justified revenge, they'd be ready for the last leg home, having enjoyed a truly fruitful adventure. No, they didn't return with any treasures, or a robot army, but they'd learned the secrets of the Deadlands, and found an erstwhile adventurer in Red Rick. Yes, the real treasure was literally the friends they made along the way. And before they got home, they'd have one more friend too, as it happens.